Hello friends. This is Phoenix What If. How are you all? So in this video, we will see what if Naruto awakened bloodlines of demon and got harem. But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. The sun was already high as two figures were getting closer to the hidden village of the Leaf. They took their time, enjoying the surrounding. The whole area was filled with trees of all sorts and their tops were covering in shadows most of the road. As they reached the town's gate, they saw two large, wooden wings of the entrance wide open. When the gates were closed, the travelers could easily read an AHYM sign, which meant to keep the demons away from the village. But as the smaller one of the two looked back, it didn't really help the Leaf. "It doesn't seem like it changed a lot, does it?" asked the taller traveler with long, white hair with red markings on his face. He was wearing mostly white and had an unusual headband on his forehead. "I know you wanna do it," he announced. The smaller one just smiled under his nose. He had blonde, spiky hair and sky blue eyes. He was wearing a black and orange dress and had a hit with a leaf on his forehead. But what really drew attention in him were probably whisker marks he had on both his cheeks. The blonde dropped his traveling bag on the ground and jumped onto the nearest roof, to look down on the village. In front of his eyes were hundreds of buildings and people were living their lives, unaware of the young man looking from above on them. "This place really haven't changed one bit," he thought with a smile as his eyes went to the Hokage monument. Only this time there were 5 faces on it. So that old bat ordered to add her face. Sorry guys, if I was here I'd stop her," and with that thought he smiled even wider. "We should report our arrival," reminded the older man. "Besides, I'm pretty sure Tsunade would like to see you again. It's been over 2 years now." "Guess so," nodded the blonde. "Though I wish to say hi to few people before that." "You can do it afterwards. The 5th would kill me if she'd find out we came to her first." "All right," replied the whisker marks as he picked up his bag and jumping from one roof to another headed to a high tower in the center of the city. It was completely made out of wood and was also one of the tallest buildings in the village. Above the entrance there was a big, kanji symbol of fire. "Oh, you're finally back," said one of the guards, as he saw the two men approaching. "Come with me. Hokage-sama will be pleased to see you," and with that he entered the building, lending the travelers to the highest floor. As they reached the Hokage office, the guard bowed and went on his way back. The white-haired man slowly opened the door to see a young-looking woman with long, blonde hair, clipped into 2 small ponytails that were falling on her back. She was wearing a green dress with a kanji symbol on its back. The man also spotted a square, blue tattoo on her forehead. Her head was resting on a desk which was completely covered by papers. The blonde walked closer to the woman. When he reached the desk, he stared at her for a moment and then, finding a pen between the papers, he drew it closer to the woman's face. But before the blonde could even leave a line on the female's face, she woke up and instantly gave him a powerful punch in the face, which sent him flying against the wall. The white-haired man just sighed at the sight, as the woman came closer to the boy and after helping him get back on his feet, started to wipe the floor with him again. "What the hell?" she yelled. "I haven't seen you in 2 years and now that you're back you want to make my face look like a painting? When will you start to show me some respect, you brat?" Few minutes later, when the woman finally decided that the boy had enough, the blonde decided he had enough long before, but that didn't convince the kunoichi. She got back behind her desk and looked at the white-haired man. "So you're finally back, Jiraiya?" she asked. "You'll stay a while, I hope?" The man simply nodded. "Good. Now then, Naruto, I think there's someone who'd be happy to see you. Follow me." And not waiting for his response, the woman exited the room and the blonde, wanting or not, went after her. They walked through the hall with many doors. Some of them Naruto recognized. They pasted the door to the room where shinobis received their missions. Another was where they complete all the promotion issues. They finally reached the end of the hall and opened a massive wooden door. As they entered the room full of candles, Naruto noticed that the walls had strange markings on them in few places and the roof was kept above their heads by many white columns. But what really drew his attention was a girl that stood in the middle of the room, practicing. The girl was his age and had medium-length, pink hair. She was wearing a red, sleeveless top, short, black leg guard and high, black boots. As she turned around to the new arrivals, Naruto noticed her green eyes. And, from what the boy remembered, her curves became more noticeable. Tsunade-sama, the girl bowed at the sight of her sensei. I believe I completed today's task, and it was then that she noticed a blonde boy with whisker marks on his cheeks, standing next to the woman. Na Naruto? She gave the boy a questioning look. Is that you, Sakura-chan? The boy replied. The woman smiled under her nose. Seems that both of you changed a lot in those 2 years. I'll miss the time when you were just some dumb brats. With that she gave both of them a warm smile. You two probably have many things to talk about, Sakura. You have the rest of the day off. So, you returned for good this time? Sakura asked her teammate, as they sat on one of the rooftops. Yeah, replied the boy. At least I'm not planning to go anywhere too soon. Still haven't say hi to so many people. Did many things change while I was gone? I mean, except the fact that the whole village has to look at Tsunade-ban's wrinkled face now. Well, you might say that, nodded the pink-hair Kunoichi. For one thing, you're the only one from our class who haven't become a chunin yet, and with that a large grin appeared on her face. There was a moment of silence before the news reached Naruto's head, and as they did, the whole Konoha found out that he's back, as a very specific noise came to all doors. What? Well, the volume of your voice hasn't changed. They both heard a voice from behind, and as they turned around, they noticed a man with silver hair and a violet mask on his face. His forehead protector was falling on his left eye. Yo! He greeted them as the two young shinobis stared at him. Kakashi-sensei! Yelled Naruto, getting to his feet. I see that you changed very little. Looks can be deceiving, replied the man calmly. You'll see that as you'll wander around the village. Yeah, guess you're right, nodded the boy. Well, it's been fun seeing you guys again, but there are things I gotta do, and places I need to visit. By that you mean, Ichiraku and eating ramen, don't you? Sakura asked with a little disappointed look on her face. Well, was all Naruto said while scratching the back of his head. I didn't had any good ramen is a really long while. Just go. She made a motion with her hand, allowing him to leave. As the boy jumped down from the roof, the girl couldn't help but smile. You're stronger, but you're still the same simple-minded blonde I remember. Okay, team number 8. Said a woman with long, black hair and red eyes. She was wearing an all-white dress that could give you an impression she's just wrapped with bandages all over. Today wait, where's Hinata? I'm afraid she won't be coming today, announced a boy with a little messy, black hair, wearing a light green overcoat with sunglasses on his nose. Huh? Why not? Didn't you heard, Kurenai-sensei? The other boy with short, spiky, brown hair and 2 red fang tattoos on his cheeks, wearing a short-sleeved, blue shirt and black pants looked a bit surprised. Naruto returned to Konoha today. I don't think we'll be seeing her too soon, and as he said so a little smile appeared on his face. A small dog running under his feet barked loudly while shaking his tail back and forth. Guess it can't be helped, sighed the woman, but also gave a tiny smile. We'll start without her. What would you guys say for a sparring match? Meanwhile Naruto was devouring the 4th bowl of ramen today. The bar owner was really happy to get his number 1 customer back. As more noodles disappeared in the blonde genin's mouth, the boy called, "One more bowl," and before he could count to 3 another meal was placed right before him. Being in his eating frenzy, he didn't even spotted that a certain girl walked into the bar. She had short, black hair. She was wearing blue pants and a short-sleeved, yellow shirt, thanks to which no one should have a problem in recognizing her as a girl. But what really drew everyone's attention in the girl were probably her eyes, which were completely white. Welcome back, Naruto-kun, she spoke up, and it was only then that the blonde shinobi has taken his eyes of the ramen bowl and looked at the new arrival. With few noodles falling from his mouth, the boy stared at the girl with his eyes widen and his mouth open, thus releasing some of his mouth content on the floor. It took him a moment to snap out of it and answer the call. Hinata? Is that really you? I missed you, Naruto-kun, she announced with a smile appearing on her face, and a small blush. How was your trip? So, the Kyuubi brat finally returned home? Asked the first figure, whose face was completely covered by a shadow cast by the hood he was wearing. His clothes were black, decorated in red clouds. Looks like it, replied another man, wearing the same clothes as the first. He was taller and carried a huge sword, wrapped in bandages. This might be very convenient for us. Now that he's among his friends, he'll be less alert. Indeed, nodded the first. Let's get going, Kisame, before today ends. The Kyuubi will be in our hands, and so both figures headed forwards Konoha. They found a small glade in the middle of the forest with a big rock on the border of it. They did so mostly due to Naruto's pushing, and Hinata, being her usual self, was too weak to refuse him. Come on, he's Naruto and she's Hinata after all. During the walk the blonde began telling her stories about his journeys and what he learned. Practically the glade was his idea. Being the show-off that he was, he couldn't help himself but to show some of his new jutsus. Of course, as they walked side by side, Hinata was blushing slightly, but during the time he was away she gained some courage. It still wasn't enough to confess to him or anything, but she felt more confident while being around him now than she used to be. I see you stopped wearing that wide, brown coat, announced the blonde, looking at her. Good thing. Yellow suits you way better, and you don't seem so gloomy anymore either. Thank you, she replied, blushing a bit more. So, Naruto-kun, she began. What exactly did that man from the hidden grass wanted you to do? After all, I doubt he'd give you that scroll for nothing. Of course, replied the blonde. There was this missing nin he wanted me to catch. You think he's ready? Asked Tsunade, looking out the window. Hard to say, replied Jiraiya. He became stronger, much stronger than he was, but... I get the point, interrupted the slug Sennin. There was a short silence before she spoken again. From what you told me, it seems that he left his hideout, hasn't he? Jiraiya simply nodded. Why would he do that now, after 10 years? You think he is up to something? I'm afraid so, responded the toad Sennin. But whether he is up to something or not, it can't be good for us. But it'd seem He is not aware of Naruto. That's the only good news about it. We need to make preparations, and find out what is his objective. Is he working alone? Hard to say, but even if he is, it won't help us much. I know, replied Tsunade, finally turning to her former teammate. I'll take care of Naruto for now. I'm counting on you to get as much information as you can about him. I'll do what I can, ensured Jiraiya before disappearing. And then I awesomely kicked his ass, Naruto concluded his story. Hinata couldn't help but smile, as she observed her crush trying to perform every move he described in his story. You really became strong, haven't you, Naruto-kun? She thought to herself, blushing slightly. Well, it seems you're having a good time, aren't you, Kyuubi? Came a voice from the bushes. Both Hinata and Naruto instantly turned around to see two men dressed in dark cloaks with red clouds on them. The smaller one had long, black hair that was partly falling on his face. The face itself had two lines running under the red eyes. The face showed absolutely no emotions. On the forehead they spotted a Konoha headband, but the symbol of the leaf was crossed by a single scratch mark that came across the whole Hite. The taller one had blue skin and the hair of the same color. His face gave an impression of a shark. He carried a huge sword, wrapped in bandages, and his headband, also scratched, had the hidden mist symbol on it. You too, said Naruto with anger in his voice. I thought that after kicking that guy's ass in the rain country, you'd leave me alone for a longer while. That weakling wasn't even a real Akatsuki member, announced the taller one with a smile that shone sharp teeth. We just hired him to check your strength, and thanks to the fact he got killed, we didn't even had to pay him. Thanks for the favor. Naruto-kun, who are they? Asked Hinata, looking at both figures. How rude of us. The swordsman smiled again and took a step closer. My name is Hoshigaki Kisame and this is my partner, Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha? Hyuga Eris's eyes widened at hearing that. We came here for the blonde brat, announced the one called Kisame. Stay out of our way and you won't get hurt. Try to stop us and you'll find death. With those words he pointed the top of his sword at her. Leave her out of this, ordered Naruto. It's me that you want, come then. Itachi, what do you think? Kisame turned to his partner. You may have this, replied the former leaf nin. But don't take too long, staying in this village longer than its need is risky. We don't want to repeat the same mistake twice. This time go all out from the very beginning. As you wish, Hearing that, the shark face smiled once more and turned to face the loud mouth. Now, since we failed finishing this that time, and with that he charged right at the blonde, with his blade aimed at his head. Naruto avoided the attack by simply lowering his head and in a fraction of a second performed his primary technique, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Suddenly 4 Narutos were charging right at the former Mist Nin, who seems totally unprepared for that. But as soon as the first Naruto's kick reached the shark face, his body exploded with water, thus sending the clones flying at the tree and making it disappear in the cloud of white smoke. A higher level of Mizu Bushin, Naruto thought to himself as he looked around the area. He made a clone at the very beginning and sent it to the glade, leaving the original safe. This isn't going to be as easy as I thought, and with that he began performing a new set of hand seals. If you're not gonna get out here, I'll make you. As he finished that statement, he slammed his hands to the ground, calling out, Doden. Ishi Tamarai no Jutsu. And hundreds of stone spikes shot from the ground, damaging the whole area. The only spot they avoided was the one Hinata was standing. What a technique! The white-eyed girl just stood there amazed. Itachi was standing on the top of one of the stone spikes, looking down on the 2-leaf nins. It was then that Naruto heard a noise coming from behind and jumped back, merely avoiding Kisami's blade, which, cutting through some of the spikes, was aimed at his stomach. What the hell is his sword made of? Naruto wondered as he was still in midair, performing a new set of hand seals. Well, as long as he has it, he's dangerous, better finish this soon. Meanwhile Naruto's clones were already attacking the shark face with a storm of kicks and punches, but the former Mist Nin was able to block all of them. Finally, seeing an opening, he elbowed the clone on his right, thus causing it to disappear in the cloud of white smoke. With one clone gone, the other 2 weren't able to keep up with the swordsman and were easily destroyed by Kisame. Unluckily for the fishman, at the same moment Naruto finished his chain of hand seals. The blonde took a deep breath and as he released the air, he called out, Kaden. Karyudan no Jutsu. Instantly a dragon formed from circling flames came right at the former Mist Nin. Having no way to dodge, Kisame performed a quick set of hand seals and he too took a deep breath. As he let the air out, water came out of his mouth and formed a barrier that stopped the fire dragon just before it reached the shark face, lifting up a ton of steam. As Naruto's feet were getting closer to the ground, Kisame launched himself towards him, preparing his sword. But before he was able to make a cut, he received a powerful blow in the stomach, which caused him to slide back a little. As he raised his head, he noticed a white-eyed girl standing in front of him in her battle stance. Hinata, Naruto whispered as he stared at the Hyuga heiress. Don't forget that Naruto-kun isn't your only opponent, reminded the white-eyed girl. I'm still here. You little, began the shark face, but his words were silenced by Itachi. She's a Hyuga, Kisame, you should watch out. Her clan is known for their unique and powerful taijutsu style. Even with a weak hit she can damage your internal organs. Well, it's not like I'll allow her to get close to me anyway, replied the former Mist Nin and threw several shurikens at the girl. But to his surprise, Hinata was instantly surrounded with a sphere of chakra that stopped the shinobi stars in their tracks. Then she began spinning and shark face eyes widened as he observed his shurikens being blown away. Don't take me lightly, advised the white-eyed girl. I'm not as weak as you think. I see, so you have some skills as well, Kisame smiled again. But it's you brats that take me lightly, and before she even noticed the former Mist Nin became a puddle of water and the really shark face was coming at her from behind with his sword ready to cut her head off. But before the blade reached the girl, Naruto kicked it from its flat side, thus throwing it out of the shark face hand, and then gave the large man a punch in the face, which sent him flying back few meters. And how about if we check how good you are with that sword of yours? Asked Naruto as he stabbed the blade deep into the ground, performed a quick chain of hand seals and with the last symbol he called out, Kage Bushin no Jutsu, and instantly tens of him surrounded the former Mist Nin. Let's do this, yelled the blonde as all the clones jumped right at the swordsmen with kunais in their hands and stabbed the Akatsuki member in various places. But it was at the very same time that the sword was covered with white smoke and before it cleared a blue skin hand grabbed the blonde's throat and lifted him up. Do you really expect me to fall for your lame tricks? Asked Kisame a bit irritated. I'm not a rookie like you. Hinata turned in the direction the shark face filled with Naruto's kunais was standing just to see him turn into the water. He created 2 Mizu Bushins when the steam that appeared after Naruto-kun's fire attack collided with his water barrier. He's skilled. I know you're not a rookie, announced the blonde. But, you know, neither am I. And with that he disappeared in the cloud of white smoke, and a second later Kisame felt a kunai near his throat. Checkmate. So the cage Bushin just now was a diversion, figured the former Mist Nin. He had to figure out I used the henge and left one clone behind on purpose so that the original could get me from behind. Nice, Kyuubi breath, but that's still far too early for you to celebrate, and with that though a smirk appeared on his face. You're stronger than you were, I'll admit that, but making mistakes like the one you did just now, you're still just a rookie. And just what do you mean by that? Didn't it bother you? Replied Kisame. That fact that I don't have my Somahata? At hearing that, Naruto's eyes widen as he jumped into the air instantly, and only thanks to that avoiding a cut from behind that splitted another Mizu Bushin in half. A double diversion, cursed Naruto, as his hands began making new seals. This guy is way better than the ones I fought so far, and with that he took a deep breath, but before he could perform the jutsu, he found Kisame reaching him and cutting his stomach, thus causing him to dispel the jutsu he was about to execute. With blood escaping, he landed hard on the ground and observed as the former Mist Nin charged at him once more with his sword ready to attack, but he once more received a hit with an opened palm from the white-eyed girl. That little hag is beginning to work on my nerves, Kisame thought to himself as he blocked another palm with the flat side of his blade. Before he knew it, he was forced to dodge a storm of attacks. As he backed away, the former Mist Nin performed a quick set of hand seals, and before Hinata could react in any way, she was trapped within a huge bubble of water. Suiru no Jutsu, announced Kisame. Never fails. Now, what should I do with you? You caused me some trouble, little girl, and now I have to punish you. Leave her alone, yelled the blonde as he slowly began to get back on his feet. The wound Kisame left him just a while ago was already healing. I won't let anyone suffer because of me, and with that thought Naruto raised his head. His eyes turned red and teeth became sharp as he held out his right hand in front of his body. In an instant chakra began to concentrate in the palm of his hand, only this time it was red. What the hell? Kisami's eyes widen at the sight. It's not the same technique he used against Hizaki. Could it be that? But he couldn't finish his thought as the blonde charged right at him, pushing the hand that was carrying the red orb out front. With rage in his voice, Naruto called out, Kitsune Rasengan, and was closing in on the former Mist Nin with an incredible speed. Hinata's eyes widen, both with amazement, but also with fear. Is that Naruto-kun? Kisame, not able to move due to using of the water prison, raised his sword and then cut Naruto's stomach as soon as the blonde came into his range. But to his surprise that didn't stop the loud mouth. The red orb hit him right in the gut and sent him flying back, spinning wildly and finally crashing hard to the ground. Naruto was breathing heavily, and after giving Itachi an evil look he collapsed, losing consciousness in the process. The Sharingan user stared at him for a moment in amazement. He was actually able to release Kyuubi's chakra, he thought to himself. That ability makes him hard to get. Best if we just take him now and leave immediately. Kisame slowly got back to his feet, propping himself with the sword. He breathed heavily, even more than Naruto just did, but except a visible wound on his stomach, which didn't seem to be fatal, he was okay. You were pretty luck, announced Itachi, not even turning to his partner. If you wouldn't weaken that attack with your Somahata, it'd kill you. How convenient that Rasengan is all chakra. Yeah, but still it was extremely painful, replied the shark face as he slowly moved forwards the unconscious Naruto. Well, we were ordered to bring him alive, but after what that Brad did to me, I think it's only fair if I chop off his leg, right? Do as you wish, responded the former Leaf Nin. Just do it quickly, we should get out of here, otherwise we're risking running into Anbu. Shouldn't take too long, replied Kisame as he raised his sword up and bring it down in order to cut of Naruto's left leg. But before the blade connected with the body, the former Mist Nin heard, Konoha Renpyu, and felt a powerful kick in the face, which sent him flying back a few meters. He stopped, using his sword as a brake. As he raised his sight, he saw a certain boy with black, helmet-like hair, huge eyebrows, wearing green. Kisame also noticed that the boy's hands were wrapped in bandages. This brat, Sharkface eyes narrowed. He looks just like that freak. He even uses the same technique. I wonder, but he could finish his thought as a shuriken flew right at him from his left. Kisame prepared his sword in attempt to deflect the shinobi star, but before he even got a chance to do that, a voice came to his ears, yelling, "Shuriken Kage Bushin no Jutsu," and suddenly in the place of one shuriken appeared tens. The former Mist Nin instantly performed a quick set of hand seals, and with the final symbol he called out, "Sweden." Arai Uzumaki, in a fracture of a second, water began spinning around him, and as soon as the shurikens reached the water tornado they were thrown of course and went with the flow. It was only then that the shark face turned in the direction that the shinobi star came from and spotted a kunoichi with brown hair, clipped into two buns, wearing pink shirt and black pants. "Hinata-sama, please take care of Naruto." The white-eyed girl heard a voice, and right before her eyes appeared a boy with long, black and white eyes just like hers. He was wearing a gray dress with wide sleeves. "We'll handle those two." Neji Nissan, more annoying brats, snarled Sharkface, preparing his sword. "This is beginning too." "Kisame, stop," ordered Itachi, drawing everyone's attention. "At this rate this will never end, we should retreat, for now." "What are you saying, Itachi? You're scared of those brats? Killing them all shouldn't take longer than a minute." "Unfortunately we do not have even a minute," announced the Sharingan user. "Since they show up, it means that the whole village is alarmed. It's only a matter of time for Anbu to appear. With you wounded it'd be troublesome to fight them, and pointless, for that matter." Kisame looked at the new arrivals with anger in his eyes, but after a short moment he calmed down and began walking towards his partner. "Fine, but remember, it was you who wanted to leave without the Kyuubi." "Fear not, we'll get it another day," replied Itachi. "It's not the end, this is merely the beginning." And with that both of them were gone. Hinata let out a sign of relief and smiled to Naruto. "They're gone. Naruto-kun," but the blonde didn't even move. "Naruto-kun?" she repeated with a weak voice. "Naruto-kun?" Tsunade walked out of the hospital room just to see a certain, white-eyed girl sitting on a hair next to the door. She had a worried look on her face, and as soon as the Godem went through the door, she gave the slug Senin an asking glare. "Tsunade-sama, will Naruto-kun be okay?" "Well," the Leaf's Hokage hesitated for a moment. "His condition has stabilized, but I don't think he'll be opening his eyes anytime soon. I'm afraid all we can do now is wait." "See, can I," she began, but Tsunade instantly figured out what she wanted to say. "Of course, you can," she replied, and before she even noticed, the Hyuga heiress already entered the room in which the loudest ninja of Konoha was resting. The Godem merely smiled and walked away. She still had other patients to check on. "So, you failed to get the Kyuubi," Kisame and Itachi heard a voice coming from the bushes as they slowly walked through the forest. Without even stopping or looking around, the Sharingan user replied shortly. "We did. The master won't be pleased," the voice announced. "Moreover, you allowed the fox brat to wound you. Kisame, you're getting old." "If that was a joke, Zetsu, then it wasn't funny," responded the shark face. "Besides, it's not like the brat defeated us, we decided to leave him behind." "You wounded the brat," reminded the one called Zetsu. "We need him alive. Remember that if he dies, because of that wound, you'll be punished greatly. Why won't you worry about getting your own Jinchuriki, The former Mist Nin was getting a little pissed. "And show yourself, I hate talking to air." It was then that a mysterious figure appeared from under the ground. He was wearing the same cloak with red clouds as the other two. His face had two colors. The left side was white whereas the right one was black. His hair was green and his eyes were completely zombie-like. But what really drew attention in this person were huge jaws that surrounded his head. "That's better," announced Kisame. "Now, you came here for a reason, or did you just wanted to piss me off?" "He is on the loose," replied Zetsu shortly. "And you think He has any business with the Kyuubi vessel?" asked Itachi. "We're not sure," responded the one called Zetsu. "But if he does, then getting the nine-tail can prove difficult." "The Kyuubi will be ours," ensured the Sharingan user. "We waited 3 years, we can wait a bit longer." Sakura quietly opened the door with her right hand. As she entered the room, she saw only one bed situated under the wall. The bed was quite big, especially since there was only one patient in it. A certain blonde genin with whisker marks on his cheeks. A moment later, the pink-haired Kunoichi noticed a chair situated near the bed and a little pale girl with white eyes sitting in it. The girl looked at her and greeted the guest with a weak smile. "Is that jonquil for Naruto-kun?" she asked Tsunade's apprentice. "Yes, it is," replied Sakura as she placed the flower in a vase that stood on a small table. "So, how is he doing?" she asked after a short silence. Tsunade-sama said that his condition has stabilized. "Unfortunately, it seems Naruto-kun cannot come back to us too soon," and with that she lowered her head. The pink-haired Kunoichi walked closer and put her hand on the girl's shoulder. Hinata looked into her green eyes as Sakura announced. "Naruto is strong, one of the strongest people I know. He'll be fine, you can trust me on that," and with that last statement she smiled at the Hyuga heiress. "I have to check few patients today, but I'll be back in an hour or two." Hinata only nodded as Sakura walked out the door. Once she entered the hallway, she spotted Kiba walking in her direction. It wasn't hard to figure he was here to see how the blonde shinobi was doing. "You saw that too, didn't you, Neji?" Lee asked in excitement as he walked around the training area. The three of them were meeting their sensei here, but surprisingly, Green Beast's idol was late. "Those red eyes, sharp teeth, what was that?" "How should I know?" replied the Hyuga genius simply. He decided to keep the fact that he already saw Naruto in a similar condition earlier to himself. "I can't answer your question, and making assumptions will only complicate things. I suggest waiting for Naruto to wake up. If he'll feel like it, he'll tell us." "And you're not even a bit curious, Neji-kun?" asked Tenten. "It's only natural that I am," responded the white-eyed boy, turning towards his teammate. "But as I said, there's no point in making assumptions," and with those words he went into silence. A moment later, Guy appeared on the area. "Greetings, me faithful students," yelled Kakashi's rival. "How are you on this beautiful evening? How does it feel to be the ones who saved their Leaf comrades from S-class criminals?" "Guy-sensei," Lee yelled back, raising his hands to the sky. "Tell us why we're meeting at such a late hour. Do we have a new mission so that our youthful spirits could shine again?" "No," replied Guy with a little sadness in his voice. "Tsunade-sama just ordered me to give you few days of as a reward for a job well done. As I said, you saved fellow Leaf shinobis from certain death. If it weren't for you, Naruto and Hinata would probably both be dead right now. Well done, my children." At hearing those words his team exchanged glances, and after a moment of silence, Neji stood up. "Since we're free today, I have something I should take care of," he announced. "Excuse me," and with that he was gone. "I'll go and train then," stated the green beast. "First, 100 laps around Konoha. I just remembered that, I forgot to turn off the gas. Good night, Guy-sensei." And so even Tenten left the area, leaving Guy alone. "Seems that you were right, Tsunade-sama," he thought to himself as he began walking away. "They're suspecting something." Kiba knocked on the door and without waiting for a reply, he entered. As he walked into the room and closed the door behind him, Hinata raised her head to see who the new arrival was. Seeing her teammate, she felt a bit relieved. None of them said anything. Kiba just stood right next to his teammate and stared at the blonde who was laying motionless on the bed. Hinata was also looking at Konoha's loudest ninja, but her head was down. The silence wasn't broken by anything until the Hyuga heiress finally decided to speak. "I couldn't do anything, Kiba-kun," she announced as tears started to gather in her eyes. "He was fighting a powerful enemy and I didn't really do anything that'd help him." At those words tears started to fall from her face. "All I did, this whole time, did I really change during those 3 years?" And with that she openly started crying. Kiba kneeled in front of his teammate and embraced her. She sobbed into his shoulder, repeating that she could do anything to help. And he listened without saying a word. Even Akamaru kept quiet. As she finally calmed herself down a bit, the dog ninja pulled her away slowly and looked deep into her eyes, saying, "Hinata, you did change, and don't you even dare thinking you haven't. I heard it from Neji. You saved Naruto's life. Don't say you didn't do anything, 'cause you did. You did everything that was in your power to help." Still, it was not enough, she continued sobbing. "You tried your best," reminded her Kiba. "No one could expect more. You didn't disappoint anyone, and I'm sure Naruto would say the exact same thing if he was conscious." At that point Akamaru barked loudly, showing his agreement. Hinata looked into Dog Ninja's eyes and slowly a weak smile began appearing on her face. "Thank you, Kiba-kun," she finally said as her teammate smiled back at her. "It's getting late," announced the young Inuzuka. "I should get going, but I'll be back in the morning. Guess you're staying, aren't you?" The Hyuga heiress only nodded. "Good night then," and with that the dog ninja walked out of the room, followed by his canine companion. But this time it didn't even took a minute for new guests to enter the room. This time around there were two of them. The first was a boy with black hair, clipped in a ponytail, wearing a black fishnet and a green waistcoat on it. Hinata also spotted 3 golden earrings in his left ear. The other visitor was a boy her age with spiky, brown hair, wearing a white scarf around his neck and a gray t-shirt. He was quite chubby and was carrying potato chips bag in his hands. "We," began the thinner one. "We heard from Ino that Naruto was here, so we figure we drop by. How is he doing?" "Well, he's fine now," replied the Hyuga heiress. "All we have to do is wait for him to wake up, and I'm sure he would get up as soon as possible if he knew how many people came to visit him." At that she managed to smile widely, for the first time since her fight with Kisame. It was also then that all 3 heard a loud "burp" coming from her stomach. "Have you eaten anything?" asked Shikamaru with a concerned look. "Well, you see," she began, starting to blush. "Figures," sighed the lazy Chunin. "I have nothing to do today anyway, so I might as well go fetch you some dinner. What would you like?" The Hyuga heiress was about to answer when Choji cut in, announcing, "Get some pizza while you're at it, will ya?" Shikamaru's eye twitched as he gave his teammate an evil glare, but after a moment he just said his favorite quote and exited the room, leaving the hungry, white-eyed girl and a chubby ninja to themselves. The hour was late. Both Shikamaru and Choji had to leave for home. The only one that stayed in the room was Hinata. During this whole time Naruto didn't even move. The only thing that was the proof he was still alive was the fact that he was breathing. The Hyuga heiress didn't left his side all that time. She only left the room to visit the girls' room. A bit earlier Sakura dropped by to check up on the blonde genin, but she had to leave soon after as her medical duties called for her. Finally midnight fell. The moon above the hidden leaf village brightened the area with the help of many stars. It was then that the white-eyed girl began to feel tired. She shook her head in hope that would stop her eyelids from falling down. Probably because of that she didn't sense another presence in the room. "It's getting late," she heard a voice coming from behind. As the Hyuga heiress turned around, she noticed her cousin who saved her the other day. "Hinata-sama, your father sent me to bring you home for the night." "I'm not going," replied the girl quietly. "Hinata-sama, I know how much he means to you," but Neji tried to oppose, but was immediately interrupted by the young heiress. "I said I'm not going," she announced in more confident tone this time. "You can tell my father that I won't be coming home until Naruto-kun wakes up, and that's final." She turned around to look at the blonde laying on the bed. The Hyuga genius just stared at the girl without saying a word. Finally, after a longer silence, Hinata spoken. "Neji-Nisan, I hope you understand. Hiyashi-sama won't be happy about this," announced the white-eyed boy. "But I'll think of something," he added short after with a smile on his face. Hinata returned the smile and after saying, "Thank you," she returned to holding Konoha's loudest ninja hand, waiting for him to wake up. Neji slowly walked out of the room and headed towards the Hyuga estate. He still had to think of an excuse for not bringing the young heiress with him. An excuse that will stop Hiyashi from sending someone else to the hospital. The hour was early. Sun was slowly rising, making the sky red, when Tsunade walked into the hospital for her everyday patrol. It was one of the few things that the slug Sennin actually did without Shizune reminding her that it was her duty. After she checked all her patients, she decided to see how Naruto was doing. The Godem slowly walked through the white halls of Konoha's hospital and stopped at the room number 122. The room where the Leaf's loudest ninja was placed. "It sure is quiet," she thought to herself. Maybe Naruto should get beaten up more often. She managed to smile at the forced joke, but it didn't really make her feel better. The slug Sennin pressed the door handle and slowly walked into the room. As she entered, she noticed a certain, black-haired girl sitting on a chair placed near the bed. Her head was laying on the edge of the bed. She was obviously sleeping. "She stayed here the whole night," wondered Tsunade. Then she heard somebody coming her way. She looked out the door just to see Kiba, along with Akamaru, of course, and Shino heading towards the room. The Aburame heir was carrying some food. "What are you doing here at such an early hour?" she asked quietly. We came to check on Hinata, replied Shino simply. And we also heard from Shikamaru about last evening, so we figure bringing her something to eat won't hurt. I see, nodded Tsunade with a smile. Well, I have Hokage stuff to do, so I'm leaving those two under your care, and with that she slowly walked away. Days gone by and Naruto still wasn't waking up. Hinata didn't left his side even for a day. Sakura, Shikamaru and others were dropping by regular. Kiba and the lazy Chunin were always bringing some food with them, knowing that the Hyuga heiress didn't want to move even to grab a snack. Neji had a difficult time in his clan's estate as Hiyashi was slowly beginning to grow impatient of the white-eyed genius excuses for not bringing his daughter back. But he decided that this time he'll help his cousin and kept the head of the Hyuga away from the hospital. Finally, one sunny morning, as the first sunrays were slowly making their way into the room where Konoha's loudest shinobi was resting, the blonde genin moved his fingers. Next on the list were his eyes, which he opened after a little while. His whole body was completely numb, so it's only natural that it'd take him some time to move it again. He was slowly getting into a sitting position when he felt something holding his left hand. As he looked in that direction, he noticed a girl wearing yellow with short, black hair. She was sleeping, but even so she was still holding his arm tightly. "So, you're finally awake," he heard a voice coming from the right. He slowly turned his head, making the less moves as possible, so to not wake the young Hyuga, and noticed Tsunade standing next to the bed with her arms crossed. "You slept over a week, and I thought that it was Shikamaru who was lazy," and with that she gave him a wide smile. "Tsunade Bachan," Naruto almost yelled, happy to see the young-looking woman. "What are you doing here? Don't you have some Hokage business to take care of?" "I do," nodded the slug Sennin. "But I thought I'll keep this girl's company." With that she pointed her head towards Hinata. "She didn't left your side even for a minute. Guess she was too exhausted to stay awake though." "She didn't left my side." Naruto gave the sleeping heiress a puzzled look. "It's not just her," continued Tsunade. "All of us were worried." At hearing that, the blonde genin began looking around the room, and it was only then that he spotted more people sleeping on the chairs placed against the wall in front of him. First was Shikamaru, who was snoring. His head was lying on Choji's stomach, which was going up and down as the chubby ninja was breathing. More to the left were Ino, a girl with long, blonde hair, clipped in a ponytail, dressing purple, and Sakura. They were sleeping as well, one propped by the other's head. As Naruto kept moving his head to the right, he noticed Kiba stretched on his chair, drooling a little. Next to his feet lay Akamaru, also sleeping. Then there was Shino, who sat on the chair with his arms crossed. Due to the sunglasses, the blonde couldn't really tell whether the Aburame heir was asleep or not. Another one, who Naruto spotted, was Lee, talking in his sleep, and right next to him Tenten, who settled her head on his shoulder. After that, the blonde noticed Neji standing right next to Hinata. The Hyuga genius smiled slightly and announced, "It's good that you came back to us, Naruto." The loudmouth returned the smile and then placed his gaze on the white-eyed girl, who was still sleeping peacefully, holding his left hand. She didn't move even an inch. Naruto smiled and slowly placed his free arm on her head, saying, "Thank you," in his head. As soon as his hand touched her hair, the young heiress raised her head slowly, and seeing the whisker marks boy, she almost jumped to the ceiling. She embraced him tightly, announcing in a cheerful voice, "Naruto-kun, you're awake. How do you feel?" she asked as she let go of the blonde genin and smiling widely. "Well," began Naruto as he placed his hand on his stomach. "Hungry. Do you think Ichiraku is open at this time?" Hinata only smiled at that right before she began laughing, and soon after everyone that was awake in the room joined the white-eyed girl. "So, he's finally awake," noticed Guy as him and Kakashi were sitting on the roof of Konoha's hospital. "Good to know he's all right." "Yeah," nodded his eternal rival. "But I'm afraid the greatest challenge he has to face is still in front of him." At that, the Leaf's taijutsu specialist looked at the sky, and without turning to the silver-haired shinobi, he asked, "You think he'll manage?" "Hard to say," replied the copy ninja, "but he cannot avoid it. The wounds on his body still haven't healed completely, so Tsunade decided to keep the blonde genin in the hospital for a day or two longer." Luckily for Naruto well, at least he was happy. Hinata agreed to bring him few bowls from the bar. Kiba, after complaining a bit, joined her since the Hyuga heiress definitely wouldn't be able to carry all the bowls the loudmouth wanted. In the meantime, The slug Sanin sent for the Junin instructors of the 4 teams which members could be considered Naruto's friends. Both Kakashi and Guy knew exactly what the Godem wanted to discuss. Kurenai and Asuma however had absolutely no clue. Tsunade-sama, do you think it's wise? Asked the smoker politely after hearing about the legendary Kunoichi's idea. The third. I remember, interrupted the slug Sanin. But it must be done. I think you all knew this day would come eventually. Besides, I believe it's best for Naruto. But how will they react? Asked Kurenai with concern. After all. I understand that, Tsunade interrupted again, but at least he'll know. We should at least let Naruto do it, announced Kakashi, who didn't seem to be interested in this conversation until now. I'll talk to him and you just bring your students to his room. Tsunade-sama, may I ask you to take care of Sakura? The Godem simply nodded and made a gesture with her hand that the Junins could leave. The meeting was over. The main part of the evening was still to come though. Kakashi knocked on the door and slowly entered the room. Naruto seemed completely healed. At the moment he was eating another bowl of ramen that Hinata and Kiba brought him, with a wide smile. The Hyuga heiress was sitting near the bed and just observed the blonde as he ate. She was blushing slightly, but this time it was barely visible. She turned her head at the silver-haired Junin as he walked into the room and gave him a small bow. Surprisingly, Kakashi returned the bow, which surprised Naruto a bit, but his astonishment disappeared quickly as he returned to eating his 10th bowl of ramen. The Junin only sighed and turned to the Hyuga heiress. Hinata, would you mind leaving the 2 of us alone? Just for a moment. Of course, Kakashi-san, replied the girl as she slowly exited the room. Now, Naruto, began the Silverhead as the door behind him closed. There's something we need to talk about. Making this longer is pointless, so I guess it's better to get straight to the point. Naruto, Tsunade-sama and me believe that it's high time to reveal your secret to your comrades. At hearing that the blonde stopped eating immediately and swallowed the noodles he had in his mouth, he didn't respond in any way, he was just looking deep into Kakashi's eye. The Junin knew his thoughts about that idea. I know how people treated you because of that, he continued. But if they're your friends, you should trust them, and if you think of them as friends, don't they deserve to know? Naruto looked out the window. He kept silent, but it didn't seem like he was thinking about what Kakashi just said at all. It's not that he didn't want to tell them nor if he was scared to do so. It was more than he was afraid about them. Not their reaction to the news, just about them. Some already suspect something, added the Junin. It's better if they knew the whole truth, wouldn't you agree? When, was all Naruto asked after a short silence. They should be heading this way right now, replied Kakashi. Soon after Kurenai, Asuma and Guy teams entered the room, along with Hinata and Sakura guided by Tsunade. The Junins backed away to stand under the wall so that their students could gather around Naruto's bed. The only elder person who stayed close to the blonde was the Godem. Neji stood left to Naruto's head and the others circled the bed. Hinata placed herself between her cousin and Shino. More to the left stood Kiba with Akamaru sitting on his head. Yeah, I read the newest chapters, but I already made him a small dog. Plus, what he really is now is a bit too much in my opinion. Then was Sakura and Choji eating his potato chips. Right in front of him stood Tsunade with her arms crossed and next to her was Shikamaru, who seemed to be sleeping and only the fact that he wasn't snoring gave Naruto hope that he's not sleeping while he's standing. As he turned his head more to his right he spotted Ino, Lee and Tenten. Everyone was here. Well Naruto, rushed the Godem. Mind telling them why they were called here? Okay, replied the blonde, lowering his head a bit. As you all know, or at least you should, 16 years ago Konoha was attacked by a powerful, 9-tailed fox demon, Kyuubi. He couldn't be stopped by the whole legion of leaf shinobis, only the 4th Hokage was able to fight with the beast as equal. Everyone knows that, Guy whispered to Kakashi. Why is he making this longer? He's preparing both himself and them for it, responded the silver-haired Junin simply. The beast was defeated and the leaf was saved. The Yondaime gave his life for that success though, continued Naruto. But even though he won the battle, the 4th was unable to destroy the demon, so he did the thing he thought was the best. He decided to seal it so that it won't threaten his village again, but the container for such beast couldn't be chose just like that. That is why he decided to seal the beast inside a newborn child. Neji instantly understood what the blonde was getting at, but he didn't want to show it. Shikamaru's eyes opened. He either got interested or figured things out as well. Shino gave Hinata a worried look. It seemed as though he knew too. Naruto breathed deeply, preparing himself, and everyone gathered around for what was coming. That child was me, he finished and raised his head to see everyone's reaction. Both Neji and Shino didn't seem to be moved at all, however the others were surely shocked. Choji even stopped eating. The blonde also noticed that Hinata's expression changed the most. It didn't seem like she was shocked. It was something else, something he couldn't tell. That explains why you have such a large amount of chakra, and why your wounds heal at such a speed, concluded the lazy Chunin. His announcement also ensured everyone that Naruto spoke the truth. To put it simply then, Neji was the first to speak when silence filled the room for few moments. You were sacrificed for the whole village. Be aware that the fact you carry a demon inside of you changes nothing to me. I still respect you as a friend, now maybe even more. Naruto's sky-blue eyes widened at hearing that. You did not choose this to be, added Shino. You may carry a demon inside of you, but that doesn't make you one. I do not feel different about you just because of that. Even that demon wasn't able to extinguish the flame of youth that is inside you, yelled Lee. Shino-kun is right, you're not Kyuubi. I think what I'm about to say goes for all of us, announced Sakura, as all the eyes turned to her. We don't care whether you carry a demon inside or not. You proved that you're a leaf shinobi and that you're someone one can count on. The information was a shock, but I don't think you'll be able to get rid of us from your life with just that. The whisker marks look at all the people gathered around. It seems that Sakura was right. The look in their eyes was different from the one he usually got from people who knew his secret. It wasn't hatred nor disgust. For the first time it was understanding and care. His gaze stopped at Hinata, whose head was low. Naruto-kun, she whispered with few tears falling from her eyes to the floor. I'm sorry, if I only knew, such pain, such loneliness, With that she fell to her knees and started crying openly. Naruto stood up from his bed and softly embraced the young, Hyuga heiress. No one said anything more. Tsunade only smiled under her nose. You found true friend, Naruto, those who accept you the way you are, you overcame your past. Few days passed since that day. Not much changed in Naruto's life since then. Tsunade allowed him to leave the hospital and once more he received hateful glares here and there. Only this time it was easier for him to take that. Now he knew that he found people who accepted him. He was no longer alone. Right now he was on his way for a training session with Neji at the Hyuga estate. As he walked through the open gates, he noticed the young, Hyuga genius already practicing with Hiashi. Instantly they both turned their eyes to the blonde. The Kyuubi vessel greeted them. Neji returned the welcome, though Hiashi only nodded. The head of the Hyuga learned to not only tolerate the demon child, but also gain some respect for him. He couldn't deny what Naruto did for Neji and that it was the loud mouth who pushed his oldest daughter to train more. He decided that he was unfair for the Whisker Marks kid. Of course he still didn't show it too much, but the cold glare he used to give Naruto disappeared from his eyes and for the blonde that was enough. I see you arrived, noticed Hiashi as he walked towards the estate. I shall take my leave then, I won't be needed, I guess, Neji. Just remember to bring Hinata back for dinner. Of course, Hiashi-sama. The young Hyuga bowed slightly as the man disappeared inside the house. Neji drank a little tea that was left on the doorsteps and prepared himself for another training session. So Hinata isn't around? Asked Naruto curiously. No, replied the young genius shortly. Lately she's been training with her teammates, she rarely appears around the house. I see, nodded the blonde. Kiba breathed heavily as he propped his hands on his own knees. He stared to his right. Akamaru already had enough as the pup laid on the ground and seemed to be falling asleep. The young Inuzuka then looked in front to see Hinata in her fighting. She was also breathing heavily and sweat run down her face. Around the place she stood were many holes created by the dog ninja Gatsuga. Hinata, what did you say if we take a break? Asked Kiba. Akamaru can't keep up. Just one more time, Kiba-kun, begged the Hyuga heiress. No, Hinata, Shino cut in. You should watch out for yourself, your body has its limits. Rest for a while and then we'll resume, I promise. Okay. She finally nodded with a weak smile. Kiba only left out a sigh of relief. To come this far in such a short time, he thought to himself. I wonder if he really is worth it. After his training session with Neji was over, more like it was interrupted by Tenten, who cut in. Naruto headed to the Ichiraku for his typical dinner. The moment he entered, he spotted Team 10 near one of the tables in the corner. "Hey, what are you guys celebrating?" he asked, almost scaring Ino to death. "What the hell is your problem?" she yelled at the blonde and sent a fist right at his face. "You want to give me a heart attack, idiot?" "We're cheering for Shikamaru," answered Choji when Naruto finally got back to his feet and walked to their table once more. He was chosen to be responsible for this year's Chunin selection exam. "That's great," announced the blonde. "Say, could you," he began, but was immediately interrupted by the lazy Chunin. "Sorry, but no can do. I know we're friends, but I can't break the rules for you." "At this rate I'll never become a Chunin," complained the loud mouth. "Can I at least join you guys?" And with that he made big, puppy eyes to them. "Allow him to do that and we'll bankrupt paying his bill," whispered Choji to his teammates. Both nodded slightly and then gazed upon the blonde once more. "I'll pay for myself," he ensured, and only after that was he allowed to sit with them. Tsunade was going through another pile of papers. She read so much today that she even thought about buying herself glasses. Her eyes began to hurt, so she decided to take a short break. Especially since Shizune had a watch at the hospital today and wasn't able to force her back to her duties, she walked to the window and opened it. Instantly a warm breeze hit her face. She closed her eyes to enjoy the feeling and without opening them again, she said out loud, "Back already? Did you find out anything?" Jiraiya, who was standing on the mold, propped against the wall, merely nodded. "He's hard to track down. I was able to find out that he was seen near the Aim Gakure a few days ago and headed west. His destination is unknown though." "That certainly isn't much," replied the Godem. "But still it's the best information we have. At least he's not heading towards Konoha. Any idea what his objective might be?" "Hard to guess," responded the Toad Sanin. "But from the direction he is heading I'd say that he may have some business with the Akatsuki." "It is possible," nodded Tsunade. "Well, for now just try to track him down and find out all you can about his current actions. I'm counting on you." "I'll do my best," replied Jiraiya. "But the trip was kinda long and exhausting, plus my fans are getting impatient. You wouldn't mind if I'd stop by to do some research, would you?" And before he knew it he had to duck under his old teammate's fist. Naruto was sitting on top of the fourth Hokage's head, looking down on the Hidden Leaf Village. He smiled under his nose and glared to his left at the face of Tsunade. "It's going to be painful, having my head curved next to that old bat." His smile widened at his own joke. Naruto-kun," he heard a shaking voice behind him. As he bended back, he noticed Hinata standing right behind him. "May I join you?" "Sure," he replied with a wide smile. "Be my guest." She returned the smile and slowly settled down next to her crush. For a moment they just stared at the white clouds slowly moving through the blue sky. Finally Hinata decided to break the silence. "Naruto-kun, I just wanted to tell you that." "I know," he interrupted. "But don't be. It wasn't your fault at all. Just the fact that even knowing my secret you still wish to be my friend is enough for me." And with that he gave her another smile. "Only a friend?" She lowered her head a bit, but immediately raised it again. "I'll always be your friend, Naruto-kun, no matter what'll happen." The blonde just smiled. "I know," and a second later a loud "burk" came out of his stomach. "Damn, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten since 12. What did you say for some ramen, Hinata-chan?" "Chan?" Her eyes instantly widened at hearing that. She gave the whisker marks a warm smile and after a short silence she replied, "Sounds good." Meanwhile, far away, in the hidden village of Sand the new Cage was walking around his tower, gazing at the dark sky that suddenly appeared above the desert. He had short, a bit messy, rusty, red hair, green eyes and a kanji symbol for love on the left side of his forehead. He was wearing a black dress and carried a huge gourd on his back. "Storm is coming," he thought to himself. "Something's gonna happen." "So, Itachi and Kisame failed to get the Kyuubi." "Yeah," announced a thin girl. "Yeah, I know he is a guy, but I have no info about any kunoichi being a member of the Akatsuki and I wanted them to have at least one. Live with it wearing a black cloak with red clouds on it. It doesn't change our plans though, does it?" "No, it doesn't," replied another figure, dressed just like the first one. From its posture you might guess he was hunching on purpose. The 9 tails is their problem, not ours. We were ordered to retrieve the raccoon, nothing more. Yeah, nodded the first figure. You must be happy, she added after a short silence. Coming back to your own village brings back memories, yeah. My mood is not of your concern. You should concentrate on getting the Shukaku. Unlike the other Jinchuriki, this one is strong. We must keep our guard up. Don't worry, we'll get the 1 tail before the storm starts, yeah. And with that the figures slowly began walking towards the hidden sand gates. Naruto just finished eating his 5th bowl of ramen when the Ichiraku owner came by. The blonde instantly ordered another one and soon after he could continue eating. In the meantime Hinata merely ate her first bowl and having no room for more she thanked Naruto's favorite restaurateur. As more noodles vanished in the Whisker Mark's boy's mouth, they both heard a familiar voice coming from behind. Oi, Naruto. As the teens turned around they noticed a man with big scar across his face and medium length, black hair, clipped in a short ponytail. We wore a chunin vest and had his headband in his forehead. Iruka-sensei, yelled Naruto, releasing few noodles from his mouth. How've you been? Fine. Sorry I wasn't able to visit you when you were in a hospital. My students are giving me a hard time, he sighed, but pretty soon a smile appeared on his face. Konohamaru is a pain in the butt, isn't he? The blonde grinned at that. Actually, he became a genin just today, replied the chunin. What? Naruto yelled from the bottom of his lungs. You mean he caught up to me? Looks like it, and with that it was Iruka who grinned. So, are you two on a date or something? And with that he looked at Hinata who blushed slightly at the thought. That's not it, she replied after a moment, and even though she tried to hide it, the chunin still managed to sense sadness in her voice. We're just spending time together. I see, nodded the Scarface. Sorry, Hinata, someday he'll get it. Iruka-sensei, you want to join us? Asked the blonde. I'd also like to hear details about Konohamaru's new team. Who's on it and who they're getting as their sensei, also what's new in your life. You're not just looking for someone to pay your bill, are you? 4 junins were laying on the ground, each with blood and burn marks on them. Looking at the carnage with no emotions on his face was a man in black cloak with red clouds on it and a big, scorpion-like tail coming from under his cloak. You just can't control yourself, can you? He asked his companion who was a tall girl with long, blonde hair, clipped in a ponytail. With all that rocket the damn clay creatures of yours made we soon might have the whole hidden sand on our backs. Yeah, replied the female. But if we wouldn't kill them, they would most likely spot and destroy the scout I've sent into the village, yeah. We shouldn't allow that. And then, as on cue, she was forced to jump into the air, avoiding a huge, sand hand that came from the ground, trying to grab her. Only thanks to her reflexes was she able to dodge, but just by few inches. Her partner looked to his right and spotted a certain red-head boy, wearing black dress and a gourd on his back. The man also noticed a kanji symbol for love on his forehead. See, smiled the girl as she landed on her feet. We don't even have to go inside the village, he came to us. He is our target, isn't he? And with that she turned to the boy. So, you heard our fight or was it something else? The redhead simply held out his hand and opened it, thus releasing what was once a bird made out of clay. The blonde looked at her's creation a bit pissed. The gourd carrier gazed upon the girl with a motionless face and finally said, if it was me you wanted, you should have asked. There was no need to kill them. At this he turned his green eyes to the fallen sand nins. Now I can't let you go. Yeah, I heard few things about you, replied the girl. One of the stronger Jinchuriki. I was hoping to test your skills in a fight, but it seems I won't have that honor, so careless. And it was only then that the boy noticed the scorpion's tail coming right at him. Instantly a wall of sand arose, blocking the attack. But, surprisingly for him, the tail went right through the blockade and stabbed the redhead in the arm. The famous Sabaku no Gara, the man said with sarcasm. I'm a bit disappointed, but then his words froze in his throat as the sand nin's body turned into sand and fell to millions of pieces. Sunabushin. The scorpion's eyes seemed to widen a bit as a huge hand of sand appeared from the underground, this time succeeding in grabbing the man's partner. Seems that the ones who got careless, were you? Came Gara's voice. As the scorpion's tail turned in the direction it came from, he noticed the red head standing on a nearby rock, slowly closing his palm. Sabaku Susu. and instantly the sand hand. A-N. This rhyme is totally unplanned, closed as well. But a moment later, surprising the redhead a bit, the hand exploded into pieces as well. Looks like you were right, Sasori, announced the girl as she walked over to the man. This one is stronger than the last one. May I have him? An artist must try new things, yeah. If it wasn't for me you'd be death, crushed by his sand, Deidara, responded the man. I know his style of fighting better than you do, so leave it to me, you'll have the next one. This is no fun, yeah, replied the girl. So will you at least allow me to play with those that are coming this way? It'd be problematic if they'd interfere, yeah. Do whatever you won't. Just stay out of this. The girl smiled as she took off towards the gate. The redhead looked after her. Those that are coming this way? Gaara repeated in his mind. Could it be? His eyes widened slightly at the thought as he turned to face his opponent. Sorry to bring you down to earth, but I won't allow you to kill more of my shinobis. Looks like I'm gonna have to dispose of you quickly and then take care of your friend. Funny thing, noticed Sasori. The last Jinchuriki we took said almost the exact thing. Are you certain, Kankuro? Asked a girl with blonde hair, clipped into 4 ponytails, dressing purple. She had a huge fan attached to her back. If that's true we should alert the village, they are. If we do that, many will die, replied a man wearing black with purple tattoos on his face and 3 scrolls on the back. And having so many people to protect, Gaara won't manage to avoid attacks himself. Besides, there's no point in alarming the village if the information might be false, but with that he froze in his tracks, avoiding a small, clay spider that fell from the sky. The sand nin slowly walked to the clay bug surprised when suddenly it got back to life and jumped right at him. It wasn't able to land on him though a strong wind blown it right into the wall of the cliff. The bug soon exploded. My, always prepared, this might be interesting, yeah, announced the girl in black cloak with red clouds on it. What say we get started? And with that she reached for her bag and placed some clay in her hand. It was then that the sand nins noticed a mouth in the girl's palm. What is she? Asked the fangirl. Kankuro just reached for his scrolls and instantly unwrapped them. Each had a kanji symbol. The first said, Karasu, crow. The second was named, Kuroari, black ant, and the last had, Sansuo, salamander, on it. As he formed few, quick hand seals, puppet came out of the scrolls. The first one had 3 eyes on the head, spiky, black hair and many hands. Another was different mostly in the shape of its head and that it had horns on it. The last was a huge, salamander-like puppet with large jaws. All of them had black material on them. So, you're one of those famous, sand puppeteer, no? Asked Deidara as she took the clay her hand-mouth shooed and performing a short set of hand seals the small clay form turned into a long saber with the blade bended back a bit. Indeed this is going to be interesting, yeah, and with that she jumped right at the puppeteer. But before she could reach him, the other kunoichi stood in her way and swiped her fan again, creating another tornado, aimed right at her. Deidara stabbed the blade on the saber into the ground to stop and once her feet touched the ground, she instantly changed directions, avoiding the slashing wind. Immediately the puppet called Kuroari appeared next to her and tried to imprison her inside itself. Acting on instinct, she performed another chain of hand seals and vanished underground just to jump to the surface a moment later, right behind Kankuro. But as soon as Deidara came into view, the puppet Karasu shoot a kunai with poison on it from its mouth. It was a direct hit. Surprisingly though the Akatsuki member started to widen like she was about to explode. Damn, that was a decoy. Noticed the sand nin, trying to cover himself with one of his puppets. However, it seemed unneeded as the clay bushin was blown away by another sand kunoichi's blow. Don't worry, I got you back, she announced, propping on her fan. Even though they're just brats they're able to work this good together, Deidara thought to herself as she placed more clay in her palm's mouth. I should stop playing around and get serious then, yeah, and with that she opened her palm, releasing few, tiny birds models. A second later, after forming another set of hand seals the birds came to life. This is more entertaining than I've expected. The real ones over there, noticed Kankuro as he looked on top of the gorge, A.N. To all those who aren't aware of the fact, the entrance to Sunagakure is a gorge. Guess I forgot to remind you of that, sorry. And it was also then that he saw few, small birds heading right at him and his sister, Tamari. Gotcha, replied the girl as she prepared herself to unleash another tornado. Yet she froze in her tracks as Deidara landed right behind her, prepared to pierce her with her saber. The Sand Kunoichi instantly turned around and blocked the blade with her fan, however there were already birds coming at her. Deidara smiled as she saw explosion on the other side of the opened fan. Then she turned to look at the boy with tattoos on his face. The puppet called Kuroari was standing right in front of him with smoke coming from the inside. So he imprisoned the birds inside his puppet? The charge wasn't really that big, but it is surprising that this marionette withstood it. A second later Kuroari fell into pieces, leaving the puppeteer with only 2 dolls, but strangely, Kankuro was smiling. The Akatsuki member looked at him puzzled for a moment before she noticed chakra gathering on the other side of the fan. Kachiyose no jutsu, came Temari's voice as she grabbed her fan, and in a fraction of a second she swiped it, only this time summoning a big weasel armed in reaping hooks. And that mammal was heading right at the clay artist. Deidara once more hid herself underground, avoiding the attack just barely, only this time the sand nins were prepared for this. Kankuro instantly made a quick motion with his hand and the puppet called Sansuo opened its mouth and blasted a powerful bomb right in the place their opponent went underground. Tons of sands were lifted into the air and fell on the sand siblings. Tamari used her fan as an umbrella so her vision wouldn't be affected by the sand rain, and thanks to that she noticed Deidara charging right at the puppeteer with her saber ready. Kankuro, on your right, she warned her brother, and only then spotted another figure attacking the tattooed boy from his left. Another clay clone, she figured, as the blade carried by the second one stabbed her brother while the bushin was destroyed by Sansuo. At the very same moment sand stopped raining. Once again smirk appeared on Deidara's face just to be wiped out from it once more as puppet hands came out from under Kankuro's dress and grabbed the clay user. Unfortunately Deidara exploded once more. This one was a bushin as well, noticed Tamari as parts of Karasu fell all over the gorge. She gazed at Kankuro, who was looking in front of him, where the real Akatsuki Kunoichi stood. I see, announced Deidara. So you used the Kawarimi to switch places with your puppet and that way trap me. Sadly you didn't expect me to create 2 bushins, now you have only 1 puppet left. It troubles me, how did you survive the explosion back then though? At those words she turned to Tamari. I blocked that one, stated Kankuro, drawing her attention to him. I actually destroyed all the birds that were coming at me with Karasu and Sansuo alone. I used Kuroari to block the birds that were coming at her and then instantly pulled it back to me. That way you thought I used it to save myself, and Tamari got the element of surprise with her summoning skill. Clever, yeah, said Deidara with a smile. The sand nins are skilled, however staying here for longer wasn't our plan. I guess I should be finishing this, and with that she put more clay into her palm's mouth. His tail is filled with poison, noticed Gaara as he looked at his opponent. Also his body seems to be more of a puppet, so I can assume he's a puppeteer, just like Kankuro. If that is so, he is a former Suna shinobi, this might be problematic. Let's start, asked Sasori as he raised his hand, and instantly hundreds of small needles shoot right at the sand's cage. But all of them were stopped by another wall of sand. Yet as the sand wall covered Gaara's sight, the Scorpion Man prepared his other hand and soon a bomb was sent flying at the red head. The wall stopped that attack as well, but the cage's eyes widened as smoke started to spread around and was quickly getting closer to him. Poison gas, noticed the Shukaku vessel as he motioned his hands quickly, and soon a pillar of hard sand rose from below him, lifting him above the smoke. As he circled his hands, sandballs shoot out of the pillar and headed right at the puppeteer. As the bullets were getting closer to the target, the sand nin began performing a new chain of hand seals. Sasori instantly lifted his tail up, and before the redhead knew it, shurikens flew at the sandballs, exploding once they hit the coming bullet. None of Gaara's missiles reached the puppeteer. He had explosive tags attached to them. Wondered the cage. That's what it seems, he's no ordinary shinobi, and with that thought he finished his set of hand seals, calling out, Sabaku Tamarai, and before Sasori knew it, spikes of hard sand started to shoot out from the ground, coming in his direction. The puppeteer used his tail as a spring and jumped high into the air. As he found himself on the same height as Gaara was, he opened his mouth, and before the cage knew it, another missile was coming his way. The redhead moved his left hand to the right, and instantly sand wave came from the pillar he was standing on, blocking the bullet's way. As Gaara heard the explosion on the other side of the blockade, he performed a quick set on hand seals with his left hand only and calmly called out, "Suna Senbon." In a fracture of a second, hundreds of small, sand needles shoot from the wall and headed right at Sasori, who was just reaching the ground. Being still in midair, there was no way for him to dodge. "This brat is better than I've expected," he thought to himself. "If this keeps up, I could be forced to use my full strength," and with that a small, metal ring came out of his back. Before the redhead knew it, metal plates started to spread above Sasori's body, creating a shield that blocked all of his sand senbons. "Not killing him is a pain in the rear," the puppeteer said to himself as he aimed his left hand, the one with metal all over it, at the cage and shoot it at his opponent. The bullet went right through the sand wall Gaara created, however the redhead just moved aside in order to avoid the hit. But, surprisingly for him, once the bullet was located behind him, hundreds of small spikes shoot out of it, all coming directly at him. In a fracture of a second, Gaara's gourd turned into sand and created a solid shield on his back, thus stopping all the needles that were flying at him. "That sand of his is beginning to work on my nerves," stated Sasori as he watched the whole scene from the ground. Then he noticed the boy performing a new set of hand seals. "Suna Shuriken," came the redhead's voice, and before the puppeteer noticed, new sand bullets were coming at him at an incredible speed. Not having enough time to aim and destroy them all, Sasori jumped back, avoiding the attack, but as his feet touched the ground, a huge hand of sand reached out to grab him. Having no other alternative, he jumped to his right, once more avoiding the hit, but surprisingly for him, he felt he's sinking. As he looked down, he noticed that he was standing in some kind of quicksands. He then looked at the redhead, who simply closed his palm. "Sabaku Susu," Gaara said calmly as the sand that surrounded the scorpion man crushed the puppet into pieces. "All those sand missiles, and then that hand, it was all just to make me fell into his trap," figured Sasori as he jumped out from his puppet, avoiding death. "He is strong, probably matching the third. It'd be interesting to check if I'm right," and with that he reached out to his hostile. The cage looked at the hooded man coldly as he began performing new seals, but then both of them stopped in their tracks due to a certain female voice. "I suggest both of you to stop, yeah," announced Deidara as she was standing on top of a huge clay bird. But what surprised Gaara even more was a figure that was laying motionless on the bird's back. It was Tamari. "Listen, Rust Head, if you want that blonde alive, you'll let us leave and turn yourself to us. As of when and where, you'll get information once we're out of here. Yeah. Now, Sasori Dana, I suggest you hop on," and with that the bird started to lower its flight. The hooded man jumped onto the bird and soon after it took off once more. "Now, I know what you're thinking, yeah," stated the clay user. "Why shouldn't I just go after you and take that girl back?" "Well, you could do that, but then that guy with makeup on his face will surely bleed to death. It's your call," and saying that she ordered the bird to fly away. Gaara looked after them for a moment and then headed right towards the gorge, where his brother was supposed to be dying. The cage was carrying his brother, who was barely moving, towards the village. The puppeteer looked up to his red-headed sibling and gave him a weak smile. "I thought Tamari and I will be enough as backup, but it seems I misjudged the Akatsuki. Forgive me, Gaara, because of my carelessness they got her." "It's not your fault," replied the cage. Even though his face shown no emotions, Kankuro could felt sadness in his voice. "Besides, I'll bring her back," and with that they reached the Suna hospital. The medics and few Anbu instantly surrounded them. Gaara gave his brother to the doctors and then turned to the masked men. "There are puppet parts near the entrance and in the gorge. Collect them all, but don't mix one with another, and send an urgent message to Konoha about the situation. We must act quickly." "So, the Akatsuki started moving again," said a man who was standing on top of a nearby mountain, watching the whole battle. "Seems that they grew a bit impatient during those 3 years, but this is convenient for me." Kankuro slowly sat on his bed, while holding the left side of his stomach, which was covered in bandages that were red now. He looked around and noticed that he was in a hospital room. "So, you finally woke up," came a voice, and as the puppeteer looked in the direction it came from, he noticed Gaara standing in the corner, his face showing no emotions, as always. "It's been almost 5 days. I slept that long?" Kankuro asked, surprised, and then recalled what happened. "How's Tamari? Is she all right?" "The Akatsuki got her," the redhead replied calmly, but the puppeteer knew him too long for not noticing both sadness and anger in his voice. They're willing to exchange her for me though. And what's Konoha's reaction to that? They've sent few shinobis as support, they should be arriving here soon. Naruto ran with the rest of the group through the desert. They were getting closer to the gates of Sunagakure. He looked in front of him as he recalled in his head how it came to this. Flashback. Come on, Tsunade Ban. Give us something challenging, begged the Kyuubi vessel. We're meant to do greater things, we're not genins anymore. Actually, you still are, reminded Sakura. With all that yelling, Kakashi sighed to himself. The fifth is not as calm as the Sandaime was. And the one to get in trouble will be me. Look, you blonde shrimp, yelled back the Godem, putting her foot on her desk. You'll do as I say, 'cause I'm the Hokage right now. Naruto just HMPFED, and you could tell Tsunade was ready to wipe the floor with him, yet they were interrupted by Shizune, who ran right into the room, carrying a small scroll. Tsunade-sama, it's an emergency. Important report from the hidden sand. The blonde Hokage calmed down, took the scroll from her subordinate and started reading. So, the Akatsuki made another move, she said out loud to no one in particular. Naruto twitched at hearing that. They attacked Suna in order to obtain their Kazekage, Sabaku no Gara. In the end they failed, but still managed to kidnap the Sand Leader's sister and offered an exchange. She then looked at the team that was standing in front of her and noticed that Naruto's eyes turned red for a short moment. Jiraiya did mention that he became friends with the current Kazekage, but why he got so mad? She thought to herself, and after a short silence, she announced. All right, team number 7, I have a new mission for you. You are to go to the sand, find out the situation and aid them any way possible. As she said so, the door opened again and this time it was Shikamaru and his team that entered the room. The lazy Chunin bowed quickly and requested. Tsunade-sama, I was the one who decoded the report, so I know the situation. I'd like you to allow me to join Kakashi-san's cell in this mission. Huh? Godaim's eyebrow went up. Since when are you so into anything? Well, began Shikamaru, but was instantly cut off by Ino. He has his reasons, Tsunade-sama. Asuma-sensei already agreed to it, so with your acceptance the three of us will assist Sakura and her team on this mission. Fine, replied the slug Sanin after a moment of hesitation. However, you guys will receive a new team member, she announced, turning to face Naruto's cell. He'll be waiting for you at the gates, you're dismissed. XXX. The next day in the morning both Kakashi's and Asuma's cells were waiting at the gates of Hidden Leaf for the additional member to the silver-haired Junin's team, and for the silver-haired Junin himself. Soon the one who was supposed to replace Sasuke came into view. It was Hinata. Hinata-chan, what are you doing here? Asked Naruto, jumping to the girl. Chan. Ino's eyebrow went up. They finally started dating. Tsunade-sama assigned me to assist you in your mission to the hidden sand, replied the white-eyed Kunoichi. She said that my eyes can prove to be useful. Welcome on board then, announced the blonde genin, shaking the girl's hand. End flashback. He let his memories get blown away as they reached the entrance to the Sunagakure. The one to welcome them was Baki. Glad you made it. Please, follow me. Kazekage-sama is waiting for you. They followed the Sand Nin through the sandy streets of the hidden sand village. It was Hinata's first time visiting the village, so she kept looking around curiously. The village itself was located in a large crater. All the buildings were made out of white brick. Their shapes made an impression of being rather primitive. They were square or just a pyramid of circles. There was no glass in the windows, which were either square or round, but that could be explained by the fact that the temperature was always high in these parts, so the local people would prefer to have fresh air in their house all the time. The sand covered the streets on which there were no wagons with food, which were so popular in the Leaf. The only plants that appeared from time to time were palms. She did spotted a lot of wells, which were practically on every street. Rarely she also noticed fountains, decorated with stunning statues. Usually the spaces around them were filled with palms and bushes that could withstand the dry land. Most of the villagers were dressed white, quite similar to Baki. He also noticed few children playing here and there, yet she couldn't spot any playgrounds. Finally they reached the Kazekage's palace. It was a high tower that was in a shape of a pyramid created from circles put on one another for the widest one to the smallest. Halfway from the bottom to the top was a huge circle with the kanji symbol for wind drawn in it. After a short walk they found themselves in front of the Cage's office. Baki asked them to enter and so they did, to find Gaara standing near the window, looking at his village. "Thank the Hokage for taking action so fast once you get back to your village," he said, slowly turning around to face the Leaf Nins. "What's the situation?" asked Kakashi. "The Akatsuki attacked the Suna," began Baki. "Temari and Kankuro held one of them back at the entrance to the village while Kazekage-sama faced another on his own outside town gates. Temari and Kankuro lost their battle. The girl was taken by the Akatsuki members, while Kazekage-sama brought Kankuro to the hospital with a large stomach wound. The one I fought was a puppeteer, a former shinobi of the sand known as Sasori of the Red Sand," added Gaara. "I've destroyed his main puppet but it seems he has at least few more. In a fight he uses a rare poison which our medics cannot identify. According to what Kankuro said, the one he fought uses clay." "So what is expected from us?" asked Asuma, stepping forward. "I just got a message where the Akatsuki invent to exchange Temari for me," announced the Godime, dropping some clay on his desk along with a small scroll. "I was prepared to go, however the elders forbid it. They explain their decision by the fact that securing Shukaku is the main priority and the Sand must concentrate on achieving that goal. Apparently they don't feel like risking any of the Sand shinobis' lives in the attempt to rescue their Sand comrade. What I'm asking you to do is head to the place of exchange and do everything that is in your power to save my sister, however, treat your lives as priority." "Sand politics always seemed complicated to me," sighed Kakashi. "However they do have a point in trying to prevent Shukaku landing in Akatsuki's hands. Still just 2 teams on such a mission can be a bit too little." "I'm aware of that," nodded Gaara. "That's why you'll have a Sand advisor coming along. She knows the one known as Sasori very well, so she should be quite useful for you. Unfortunately that's all I can give you. Since we'll be facing S-class criminals, I'm afraid this may be too little," announced Shikamaru. "Something like an antidote to that poison you told us about would be useful. Also, since you said that you were able to destroy that puppet, it might give us an advantage if we be allowed to see it in order to find out how it works." "I can help out with an antidote," proposed Sakura. "Tsunade-sama taught me about poisons, so with the right equipment and herbs I might be able to come up with something." "Our medical resources will be at your disposal," replied Gaara, nodding towards the pink-haired Kunoichi. "As for the puppet mechanism, Baki can lead you to the place where our puppeteers work on putting Sasori's tool together. Perhaps they'll be able to provide you with some helpful information. All that's left is to ask how much time we have for preparations," asked Kakashi. "Unfortunately time isn't on our side," replied Baki. "In order to get to the exchange spot in time, you'll have to leave tomorrow morning." "I should got to work on that antidote right away then," announced Sakura. And so everyone made their preparations for tomorrow's mission. None of them even noticed that the day have passed and the sun started to come down. The temperature dropped and a nice breeze started to blow from the southeast. As the sky became red and the sun was more than halfway hidden, the buildings in the Sunagakure started to create long shadows, making the village look grim and unfriendly. Hinata stood on top of one of the buildings and looked down on the still busy streets of the hidden sand village. She smiled, feeling a gentle breeze blow in her face, and didn't even turn around when she noticed someone's presence. "Are you trying to scare me, Naruto-kun?" she asked with her back still turned. "Damn, with that Byakugan of yours, there's no way to lay a prank on you," moaned the blonde. "That's not fair." The girl giggled at the comment. "Sorry, but I can't help it," and with that she finally turned to her crush, smiling. "I know," replied the loud mouth, laughing and scratching the back of his head. He then came closer to her and stopped only when he was beside her. They stayed silent for few moments, before he decided to speak up. "Hinata-chan, since the time we left Konoha I wanted to ask you something." She gave him a puzzled look, but kept quiet. "Why?" he began, but then shut his mouth, like he was looking for the right words. "Why did you accepted this mission? I mean, neither Kiba nor Shino take part in it." "It was an order," she responded simply, doing her best to hide a small blush that started to appear on her face. "And Tsunade-sama had a point thinking that my abilities can be helpful. Besides, Shino-kun went out on a mission with his father again, so my team was free from our duties anyway." Can't argue with that, nodded the blonde, earning a questioning look from the white-eyed Kunoichi. I mean, I saw you fight with Kisame. You're strong, and since it's the Akatsuki that's our enemy, we need skilled ninjas. It's good that you're here. At hearing that, Hinata's face became more red than the sky was at that time, but Naruto didn't seem to notice, because he just said, "Well, I'm off. We should rest since we're leaving in the morning," and left. The Hyuga heiress stood on the roof for few more minutes though, waiting for the blush to disappear from her face. The next day all 8 Leaf Nins were making their final preparations for the trip. Surprisingly for them, Kakashi came on time. Gaara, along with Kankuro, stood with them at the gates, waiting for the Sans advisor to show up. After a short while he finally appeared. It turned out to be an old woman, incredibly short with medium length, blonde hair. I assume they were blonde, wearing a cap and worn-out robe. Wait a minute, that's our backup, yelled Naruto, irritated. She looks like she's about to fall into pieces at any time. And I'm not even sure if that's a woman. And before he knew it, the tiny female was coming right at his head with a kick. The blonde bended under the kick, spun around on his left foot and aimed a kick of his own in the back of the aggressor's head. But surprisingly for him, the Sand Nin shoot her hands back and grabbed his leg before it connected with her body. Using Naruto's leg as a brake, the woman turned in midair to face the blonde and, still holding on to his leg, aimed another kick in his face. In an instant the blonde performed his signature move and made his clone stop the attack. And before any one of them could launch another attack, they both got trapped in the sand fist. I believe that is enough, announced Gaara with his usual voice. Chio-san is one of the Sand's top puppeteers. She's also Sasori's grandmother, thus she knows him well. Among all the Sand shinobis, she's the one that can prove most useful in the battle you're about to enter, and with that said he released the two from his grip. That old hag, thought Naruto, giving the woman an angry glare. She's pretty good. Listen brat, before you were born I've seen more battle than you ever will, so show me some respect, ordered the one called Chio. We should get going, announced Kakashi, not really interested in what just happened. We have a long trip before us and it's better to travel before the sun raises too high. The other Leaf Nins only nodded, and a second later they all went on their way. You think they'll save Tamari? Asked Kankuro when the rescue team disappeared from their view. He'll do it, assured the Cage, not even turning to his brother. I'm sure he will. After a half-day trip the Leaf Shinobis along with Chio reached their destination, which turned out to be a wide canyon. The Junins looked around in search for possible traps and ambushes. It seems clear, but don't forget we're dealing with the Akatsuki, reminded Asuma. Expect anything, but then his words froze in his throat as he looked behind him at the small field of rocks. He glared at the silver-haired Junin, who also seemed to sense what he just did. Kakashi, is that? He began, but the Sharingan user interrupted. Seems like it. Listen, it looks like we won't be able to help you out with this mission, he said, turning to the young shinobis and the Sans advisor. Carry out your duty in Asuma and I will get back as soon as we'll be able to. Asuma-sensei, what's wrong? Asked Choji, looking confused. But the Junin didn't answer. He just looked at Kakashi, and after the silver-haired nodded they both disappeared from others' view. I'll never understand Leaf Shinobis, moaned Chio as she turned to the young ninjas. Anyways, it seems we're on our own now. I hope you all remember the plan. Kakashi and Asuma reached the rocky field and began to look around. We know you're here, announced the smoker. Your chakra can be easily sensed. Show yourself. A second later a boy with medium-length, blonde hair, formed in dreadlocks walked from behind a nearby rock. He had hazel eyes and was wearing a black and yellow shirt and pants in the same colors. He had a small scar across his left cheek and had a Konoha headband protector with the slashed leaf symbol on his forehead. And I really hoped I won't have to face you, Kakashi-san, announced the boy, who seemed to be around 20. Last time we fought it got a bit unpleasant, then his gaze rested on Asuma. But I'm quite sure we haven't met before. Mind telling me who you are? Sarutobi Asuma, replied the smoker. And you are that S-class criminal and a missing nin, Kengo, right? A former Akatsuki member. Indeed I am, nodded the blonde, smiling slightly. I guess I should be honored to know that the leaf still carries memories of me. Don't get too happy, interrupted Kakashi. We'll take you down and bring you to your final justice. You can either come peacefully or we can take you by force. Interesting, replied the one called Kengo. And you think that just the two of you will be enough to defeat me? I didn't came here to fight you. All I want is to speak with my former partner. Then again, I'm wondering what you learned during those 10 years, Kakashi-san, and saying so a wide grin appeared on his face as he went into a fighting stance. Deidara looked at the tall pail of clay that she created, on top of which Temari was tied up by clay chains. Now, isn't that spectacular, Sasori-sama? She turned to her partner whose face was completely covered by a hood. You know what I think of your type of art, he replied simply. Besides, now it's not the time to talk about that. He came, and with that he raised his head, thus revealing a face of a young boy. Deidara followed his gaze and noticed a certain, redhead sand nin in a jet-black robe with a large gourd on his back walking their way. It's time, yeah. Gaara walked towards the two, missing nins slowly. None of them said anything, at least until the redhead stopped a meter or two away from the Akatsuki members. They stared at each other for a moment, before Sasori decided to speak up. I didn't really think you'll come, and with that he launched a kunai right at the sand nin. The cage jumped to his left, dodging the incoming knife and instantly threw a handful of shurikens at the two. However, before the shinobi stars were able to reach the missing nins, they were all deflected by clay bullets, which shoot out of Deidara's mouth hand. I guess that was to be expected, yeah, announced the girl with a smile appearing on her face. But I can say that you guys did put a lot of effort into it, yeah, you even used another Jinchuriki so we won't notice it's just henge too soon. However, we're not as stupid as you think. Yeah, and with that another Deidara appeared on top of the pail, blocking Shikamaru and Ino, who were just reaching for Temari. Instantly Sakura and Hinata jumped out of their hideout and stood right next to the redhead, and Choji along with Chio appeared on top of a nearby rock. No point in hiding, I guess, announced Gaara, and after performing a quick hand seal he turned into Naruto. But with my Kyuubi chakra you should have it difficult that I'm a different Jinchuriki, so how did you know? I fought the one you transformed into, replied Sasori calmly. He was forced to use a bit of his demon power against me, therefore I'm aware of the difference. Nothing can escape the eye of an artist. 7 against 2, that won't do, Deidara. Good thing we decided to prepare ourselves, yeah, replied the girl that was still hanging above the two-leaf nins on the pail. And at that rate, the odds are against you guys, and with that a smirk started to appear on her face. Before anyone knew it, two other, Deidara's replications appeared right behind Chio and Choji, and tens of hooded figures jumped out from under the sand, surrounding Naruto, Hinata and Sakura. Now, shall we begin? Asked Sasori with a smile appearing on his face. Damn it, I can hardly keep up with my eyes, not to mention the rest of the body, Asuma cursed in his mind as another attack with his hand knives missed the blonde's face. And Kakashi doesn't seem to be doing much better. At that rate, we'll lose badly. Kengo jumped away and onto the nearby rock. He glanced down at the two-leaf junins with a smirk. Konoha's elite, is that really the best you can do? Kakashi slowed down and performed a quick set of hand seals. As he finished, his right hand got surrounded with chakra that made a weird sound. The missing nin's smile just widened at the sight. Honestly, Kakashi-san, do you really believe I'll fall for the same trick twice? You should figure that during those 10 years I've invented a way to stop that damn Chidori of yours. Just because you almost killed me with it once, doesn't mean you'll succeed once more, and it eats a lot of your chakra. You never know unless you try, replied Kakashi calmly as he charged at the blonde at an incredible speed. How dumb can you be? Wondered Kengo as his smile kept getting wider. In order for that Reikiri to get me he'll need to jump up here, and when he does he'll become an easy target. Kakashi-san, I'm disappointed. But to his surprise the silver-haired Junin came to a sliding stop right before the rock and hit it with the Chidori, breaking it into thousands of pieces. As the ground started to disappear from under his feet, Kengo lost his balance and started falling with the rocks. A diversion, he noticed a little too late. I felt for the oldest one in the scrolls, he cursed as he propped his left hand on the ground in order to avoid falling on his head. But the moment his hand touched the sand, Asuma launched an attack in his stomach. Acting on instinct, the blonde spun around, avoiding the hit, and then, still standing, on his left hand only, kicked the smoker in the back of his head. His eyes widened a second later though as he saw that Asuma, instead of being sent flying away, used his knives as brakes and remained in place. The smoker turned around and aimed another attack in the blonde's stomach. Surprisingly however, the sand under Kengo's hand exploded, creating a huge crater and blowing the leaf nin away, saving the missing nin at the same time. Was that? Began Asuma, but the answer was obvious to him. So everything I heard about him was true. It seems, this only makes things more difficult than they already are. In the middle of the crater stood the blonde with a smile appearing on his face once more. He looked at Kakashi, whose face, even though it was mostly covered, revealed surprise. "What's with that look, Kakashi-san?" he asked confidently. "You should have expected this would come sooner or later. I did mastered it only recently, but I think I did a good job, wouldn't you agree? Of course I made some improvements to it, since that jutsu's power leaves plenty to wish for." "To master it on your own," began Kakashi, shocked. "And when you only saw it once even, you have gotten stronger since the last time we fought." "It goes with the family," smirked the blonde. "Now, as much as I enjoyed it, my time is valuable so I think I'll be finishing now. Do forgive me Kakashi-san, Asuma-san," and with that he charged at the two leaf nins. Ino instantly jumped off the pail and landing safely on the ground she picked out few explosive tags. Meanwhile Shikamaru performed his standard technique, aiming at Deidara, Kujimane no Jutsu. The missing nin started to crawl up the pail, trying her best to run away from the shadow that was chasing her, but to no avail. Finally, having no other alternative, she decided to follow the blonde leaf Kunoichi's track and jumped of the pail as well. The lazy Chunin immediately reached trapped Tamari and using his shadow to crawl under the clay chains, making them loosen their grip on the sand Kunoichi, thus freeing the girl. Just then the tags placed by Ino exploded and Shikamaru jumped down with unconscious Gaara's sister in his arms down, in order to avoid crushing hard to the ground. "So that's why he used the shadow bind, to get me off the pail, yeah," Deidara figured as a small smile began to appear on her face. "His goal from the very beginning was to free that girl first. I felt for a simple trick, yeah, oh well, it's more fun that way," and with that she placed some clay in her hand mouth. "Ninpu. Nendo Hitoya no Jutsu," called out Deidara as clay shoot out of the hand mouth and started to circle around Choji, making him almost completely immobile. The boy tried to break free, yet the bind turned out to be too strong. "So she uses clay," Chio announced to herself as she jumped back, throwing shurikens at another blonde's clone. A unique ability, she might be hard to take down, and that thought appeared in her mind. All of the shinobi stars she threw got deflected by a clay kanata created by Deidara. At the same moment a smirk appeared on Choji's face and as his prison started to widen, he called out, "Baika no Jutsu." And before anyone knew it the chubby ninja became 3 times larger than he already was and with another technique he called out, "Nikuden Sensha." And suddenly his head, legs and hands disappeared in his body, which started to spin at an incredible speed. Instantly the clay blocking him got smashed into hundreds of pieces and the spinning ninja himself ran over the clone that imprisoned him, making it fall apart as well. Such hit power, Chio's eyes widened at the sight. Those kids are stronger than they look, and with that she reached for a scroll in her bag. Sakura smashed another one of Sasori's puppets with her fist, yet 2 more were coming right at her. As they came closer in order to cut her with the katanas they held in hands, Hinata appeared out of nowhere and as she began to spin, the blades hit the chakra sphere that surrounded her. The moment the white-eyed girl called out, "Hake Sho Kaden." The blades, as well as the puppets, got blown away and crashed against the rocks. Hinata finally came to a stop and as 2 new dolls charged right at her, she hit both in the gut, using her gentle fist. It didn't seem to have any effect on the attackers however. Right, their puppet, the Hyuga heiress reminded herself as she jumped back, thus avoiding a hit from the katanas. They don't have any chakra circulating system nor internal organs, Sujuken won't do much damage to them. At this point my taijutsu is rather useless, and with that she instantly picked out several throwing knives and tossed them right at the dolls. All hit their targets, yet that 2 didn't seem to make any effect either. Meanwhile Naruto attacked Sasori from behind, making him jump away in order to avoid being hit directly. A second later 3 of the missing nin's puppets were already attacking the blonde from every direction. The loud mouth only smirked, and after performing a quick set of hand seals he called out, "Doden, Ishi Engine no Jutsu." And in an instant stone spikes shoot from under the ground, creating a ring around him and piercing all the puppets that charged at him in the process. "That's a high-level jutsu from the Iowa," noticed Sasori as he sent more of his dolls to attack the boy. "How come a brat from Konoha learned it?" Itachi and Kisame never mentioned that. Oh well, a minor inconvenience, but just then he felt someone grabbing his feet. As he glanced down, he noticed two Naruto clones coming out from the sand and grabbing his legs tight, and a second later two other clones grabbed his hands, making him unable to move. "That brat," he thought as he looked at the whisker marks. "This is quite unexpected. Never thought I'll be forced to use me," and with that thought spinning blades ripped his cloak and cutting all the bushes made them disappear in the cloud of white smoke. "What the?" was all Naruto could say at the sight as he smashed another puppet. "What's with that guy's body?" Just then he noticed Chio landing right next to him, holding two scrolls, one in each hand. "If you're wondering how he managed to perform that, I think I might be able to answer," she announced. "As you figured out already, he's a puppeteer, and as such he could also make himself into one," and with that her face got a bit grim. "Yet I have never expected he'd go that far. He turned himself into a puppet." The blonde eyes widened as he took another glare at his opponent, and for the first time he saw how he real looked, or at least used to look. He had messy, red hair and hazel eyes. His face showed no emotions at all, and all parts of his body seemed to be connected with one another by some sort of clips. In the place of his stomach there was a strange device that shoot a rope ended with a large blade. Naruto also noticed a plate with a strange symbol on the left chest. Also there was a hole in his right chest from which came tens of chakra strings. "That also someone explains how you're able to control so many puppets at once," said Chio, pointing at the hole. "To go this far," and with that she unrolled the scrolls and performed few, quick hand seals. Instantly white smoke shoot out of the scrolls, and before the loud mouth knew it, two puppets in black robes stood between them and Sasori. "Look at this, you even brought these." For a moment Naruto thought the missing nin was about to smirk, yet his expression stayed emotionless. "Mom and Dad, my first creations, Granny, you entertain me to no end," and with that he picked out his own scroll, and performing similar seals to the old kunoichi, he summoned his own puppet. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked to the sky in order to see a doll about 5 meters tall, its hands way bigger than they should be. The puppet had a huge hammer attached to its back and no eyes or mouth. "I call him Kyokanmaru," announced Sasori, who now stood on top of the giant. "He had never failed me before, and I do not think he'll now, so, shall we begin?" As clay birds came closer, Shikamaru performed a quick chain of hand seals, and with the last symbol he called out, "Kagekui." Instantly his shadow extended itself, and once it reached the incoming clay creatures, it transformed into spikes, and piercing all the birds, it made them explode. Ino wasted no time and charged at the missing nin a second later. Before Deidara noticed, she was right in front of her, and jumping into the air, she aimed a kunai she held in her head at the Akatsuki member's head. Deidara ducked under the attack and with a smirk grabbed the blonde kunoichi by the hand that held the kunai. Instantly the missing nin placed some clay in the mouth hand, and right before the leaf nin's eyes a spike started to form, aimed right at her. Deidara never got to use it though, as she was forced to jump back to avoid a gigantic fist that slammed the ground between her and Ino. As she glanced up, she noticed a certain, chubby ninja standing in front of her with an oversized arm. "Oh, you got rid of my clones already?" The missing nin seemed a bit surprised, yet a smirk was still present on her face. "Guess those brats will be more of a challenge than I first thought, yeah." "Choji, done already?" Ino seemed impressed. "Yeah," replied the chubby shinobi, making his arm get back to its normal size. "Chio Basama went to help Naruto and the others with Sasori, so we'll have to handle this freak on our own." "Well then, smarty pants," with that Ino turned to Shikamaru. "Any ideas?" "It'll be troublesome, but I think we can finish this in about 5 minutes, responded the lazy Chunin. "I know just the thing. Let's do it then." The leaf kunoichi threw her fist to the sky. Konkuro grabbed the scrolls with his puppets and headed towards the door. However, before he was able to open them, Gaara appeared before him with Baki standing right behind him. "Going somewhere?" asked the Kazekage, emotionless as usual. The puppeteer hesitated, but his sensei decided to answer for him. You wanted to go to save Tamari, didn't you? The boy with makeup only nodded. The elders are against that. You already got beaten by the Akatsuki once, and when Tamari supported you, why do you believe you have any chances now that you're wounded and alone? And just that is enough to abandon my teammate. Came a response. Gaara, I know you have duties, but she's your sister, and more than that, she's also a sand shinobi. As a cage, shouldn't it be your responsibility to bring her back? I wish I could, replied the redhead, what seemed cold, but the puppeteer knew him too long to be fooled by that tone. I real do, but since I'm their target. This is bullshit, yelled Konkuro. You're doing this, because the elders told you to. What happened to that Gaara that once said to me that he wished to become the cage to protect his village? To protect his people, are we really gonna let Konoha fight our own battles? Gaara just looked at him. The last time he saw his brother that determinate was during the Chunin exam when they were running away. He slowly turned around and heading towards the door, he said to his former sensei, Baki, I'd like to make an announcement. He destroyed them both with such ease. Chio stood with her mouth open and her eyes widen above the two puppets that now were smashed into bit. He really became a monster. Damn it, cursed Naruto, as he performed his standard technique, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. And instantly tens of him appeared before the huge doll. Even if there will be more fleas, began Sasori, still emotionless. They'll still be just fleas. Listen up, redhead, yelled the real Naruto, who stood behind his clones, pointing a finger at the missing nin. You attacked my friends, even wounded one of them, you kidnapped another, and now you're looking down on us. I'll teach you not to mess with me nor any of my friends. And with that all the clones charged at the giant. How sad, sighed Sasori as Kyokanmaru raised his hammer at the clones. The blondes that ran in the further lines jumped into the air and using the backs of the clones out front spring into the air even higher just a second before the giant's hammer wiped the clones that stayed on the ground with a single swing. Instantly the puppet raised its hammer a little and once more attacked the clones. Half of Naruto's grabbed the other half and threw the higher into the air just before they disappeared in the clouds of white smoke as they got hit with the powerful weapon. The giant once more swung his hammer and destroyed the rest of the clones, making them disappear in the cloud of white smoke. As the smoke cleared, however, Sasori's eyes widened, if you can call that, since he's a puppet and all, at the sight of two more Narutos that stayed behind in the air. The clone grabbed the original by the hand and tossed him right at the giant with all the strength it had. The real blonde concentrated the chakra in his palm, creating a ball of spiral, blue chakra in it. That brat, I won't manage to make Kyokanmaru do another swing in time, and the second this thought hit the missing nin's mind, Naruto slammed the hand that held the chakra orb into the puppet. A second later the giant fell apart into thousands of pieces. He actually managed to destroy Kyokanmaru, Sasori said to himself as he landed safely on his feet. It seems that this Jinchuriki may be hard to obtain, I'll have to go all out now. A second later Sakura and Hinata joined the blonde and the surprised San Kunoichi, who stood right before the missing nin. Sasori just gave both of the new arrivals a bored look and asked, So, you destroyed all my puppets already? Of course, replied Sakura with a smirk. Did you really thought that you'll be able to defeat us with just them? Naruto-kun, are you alright? Asked the white-eyed girl with concern in her voice. Yeah, responded the blonde. I was just worried about you two a bit, but I see that there was no need for doing that, let's just kick this guy's ass and head back already. Such confidence, Sasori shook his head. You don't suppose I'm out of tricks, do you? And with that he unrolled another scroll and after performing the right-hand seals he summoned another puppet. The moment it appeared, Chio's eyes widened even more. Her hands started shaking a bit, yet she managed to stay calm. This is. So you noticed? Asked the missing nin as a puppet in black robe and long, black hair stood behind him. Hope you're impressed, because this one was a bit hard to obtain. What is it, Chio-basama? Asked Hinata, giving the sand nin a questioning glare. The one who was thought to be the most powerful man that ever lived in the Suna, replied the old Kunoichi quietly. The third cage. The Sandame cage. Sakura repeated surprised. What do you mean? So what if that looks like the third? Asked Naruto with confidence. That's still just a puppet with strings and all, it's not different from those that we already destroyed. I guess you never heard of Hitokugutsu then, assumed Sasori, looking at the blonde. Hito Watsu. The loud mouth was completely dumb-fooled. Hitokugutsu, repeated Chiyo. One of the most gruesome puppet arts in the hidden sand. Performed correctly, it transforms a human body into a puppet, thus making the chakra that was inside of the body to stay there. Moreover, the puppet can also use any jutsu known to it while it was still alive. Of course, that sort of thing is only possible if the puppet is made out of the right body, and since that is so, Sasori was the one that killed the Sandame Cage. He was able to defeat the Cage. Hinata got scared. And the one that was thought to be the strongest among the hidden sand leaders, this man, he's a monster. Indeed I have, nodded the missing nin. But I just couldn't help myself really. It'd be a shame to waste Sandame Sama's talent. After all, he did invented the jutsu that is most feared in the village, and with that he made a quick motion. The puppet opened its mouth instantly, and strange, black cloud started to escape its body. So, even Satetsu, Chiyo's eyes narrowed. Yes, the jutsu for which Sandame was thought to be the strongest to ever live in Suna, replied Sasori. Of course my puppet's strength isn't as great as the third's, but still it should be enough to take all of you out. But to think that a bunch of brats and an old hag who's 1 foot in the grave would push me that far as to use this, how embarrassing. I guess the only way for me to wipe that shame is to kill you, and before anyone knew it, spikes shoot out of the black cloud right at the surprised leaf nins and the sand kunoichi. Both Chiyo and Sakura manages to jump back far enough to avoid the spikes. Naruto and Hinata on the other hand weren't so lucky. The blonde was jumping in every direction. The moment his feet touched the ground, they left it again. Hinata decided to avoid the attack differently. She began to release chakra from her body, and once the spikes were close enough, she began spinning around, in hope to blow them away. To her surprise though, the spikes went right through her shield, and cut her side. The Hyuga heiress jumped back just in time to avoid certain death. They're filled with chakra, she figured. Kaden won't do, and with that pain shoot through her body. She glanced at her side, which was cut, and covered the wound with her hand. In the meantime Naruto jumped out of the spike forest and landed right next to her. Though luck, announced Sasori coldly. Those spikes were filled with my venom, so eventually this girl will die in an hour or so. Bastard, was all Naruto said as he threw the missing nin a death glare. Hinata-chan, how are you feeling? I've been better, to be honest, replied the white-eyed girl, smiling slightly. Sakura-chan, you're the medic nin, take care of her, said the blonde in an ordering tone. I'll just kick that bastard's ass and help you out in a moment, and with that he walked forward to Chiyo. Hey, you old bat, what did you say if we finish this? With Hinata-chan wounded I don't feel like playing around anymore. If you real want to, sighed the sand kunoichi as she unwrapped 10 scrolls. Deidara jumped back in order to avoid the shadow spikes that were coming right at her. She instantly placed some more clay in her hand-mouth, and after performing a quick set of hand seals, she called out, Ninpu, Gosunkugi Arashi. In a fracture of a second, hundreds of small, clay spikes came flying at the young chunins. Too many, noticed Shikamaru as the bullets kept closing in. Just then Choji stood between the incoming spikes and his friends and slammed his hands to the ground, thus lifting up a huge, stone wall. A little trick I learned from an old enemy, how do you like it? That fat ass used the rocks to block my bullets, cursed Deidara as she performed some more seals. Seems I'll have to use my thumb card then, yeah, but as she decided that, Shikamaru ran at her from behind the wall lifted up by Choji and prepared kunais to throw them at the clay user. He's attacking. Wasn't that round guy the striker of their team? At that moment the lazy chunin threw all the knives right at the missing nin and performed a quick set of hand seals. As Deidara dodged all of the incoming weapons, she noticed that Shikamaru's shadow, that was falling on the stone wall, started to change shape, and once more she had to avoid shadow spikes that shoot right at her. Now Choji, yelled the shadow user as his teammate smashed from under the ground in the form of the meat tank, coming right at the surprised missing nin, who was unable to avoid both the spikes and the incoming cannonball. This is bad, yeah, figured Deidara as she observed Choji coming closer and closer. But if he'll smash me, he'll get pierced by those spikes as well. That can't be their true plan. Yeah, Guess I'll just have to reach for more lower tricks, and with that she slammed her hands to the ground. A second later she was already hidden underground and Choji was coming right at the shadow spikes controlled by Shikamaru. The chubby ninja instantly stopped spinning and watched as his friend commanded the spikes to stop just inches from his face. "She's good," announced Ino, who just joined her teammate as she carried still unconscious Tamari. "So, when do we put your plan into motion?" "The moment she'll use what we're pushing her to," replied Shikamaru simply. "Your famous skill, Granny?" asked Sasori, his face still emotionless. "One puppet for every finger, and they also say that a puppeteer's strength is measured by how many dolls he or she can control at one time. It's said you once took a fortress with those first puppets ever made in the Suna." Chio was now operating 10 dolls in white robes, all her fingers surrounded by chakra strings. "Sasori, I will defeat you, and then bring you back to your old self. You're still using that idiotic reason to chase me." For a moment it seemed that the missing nin is going to laugh, however nothing happened. "Those dolls of yours are good, but you cannot expect them to compare to the Sandame. Let me show you that puppeteer's strength is not just about the number of puppets, but also their quality, Satetsu," and with that the black sand started to come out of his puppet's mouth once more. The sand kunoichi instantly moved her dolls so that they'd charge at the missing nin. To her surprise however Sasori made a wide wall out of the black cloud and placed it between himself and the charging puppets. Before anyone noticed, spikes shoot out of the wall, destroying 2 of the dolls used by Chio, which didn't manage to escape in time. "Damn it, he's playing with us," cursed Naruto as he ran right through the spikes, avoid any direct hit and gathering chakra in his right palm. The moment he reached the black sand wall, he held out his hand, that carried a large, blue spinning chakra, and the second it connected with the obstacle, he called out, "Rasengan." The wall broke into thousands of pieces and instantly Chio puppets jumped over the blonde in the attempt to attack the missing nin, but to both Naruto's and the kunoichi's surprise, Sasori was not there. The whisker marks looked into the sky and only then noticed the Akatsuki member, carrying his puppet on his shoulder, with black wings on his back. He can even make that sand carry him. Does this skill has limits? His eyes widen a bit as the black cloud formed itself into hundreds of shurikens and shoot right at the leaf nin. "Shit," cursed the blonde as he performed a quick set of hand seals, Fuden, Kei's Tikiatsu. And instantly the air around his started to speed up, creating a large cyclone with Naruto standing in the eye of it. All of the black shurikens got carried by the wind and were blown away. So the brat did master techniques from around the world, Sasori almost smirked at the sight. He may be a hard one to get, I really should stop playing around then, and with that his doll let out more black sand. In an instant more black spikes came raining from the sky right at Naruto and Chio. The leaf nin started to dodge as much spikes as he could, but there were simply too many. "Naruto-kun," Hinata whispered weakly as Sakura was finishing treating her. Dust lifted up from hundreds of spikes hitting the sand, thus covering the whole area. When it disappeared, both leaf kunoichis saw Naruto and Chio defended by the sand nin's dolls, which taken most of the spikes on them. "I see I managed to block it in time," noticed Chio, breathing a bit heavier than usual. Then she tried to move her puppets and only then did she realize that they won't listen. After taking a closer look at them, she understood why. The iron sand, it's getting into their joints. "Surprise, you old hag," announced Sasori as he and his doll finally landed on the ground. "Your puppets have just became useless, and with that, this fight is as good as done," and so the Sandame released even more black sand that started to circle above him and the missing nin. "Damn it," Naruto cursed in his mind as he clenched his teeth. "With all that sand I can't reach him with Rasengan, and with the ability to create those spikes Kage Bushin isn't more than a waste of chakra, what to do?" I can disable his puppet," announced Hinata as she joined the fighting too along with Sakura. "All I need is a way to get close to him." "What are you talking about?" asked Sakura. "Even if you really had a way to do it, there's no hope for us to make you an opening. Chio Basama's puppets are immobile and neither me nor Naruto are long-range fighters." "I can still operate 2 of my dolls," announced the sand kunoichi. "That's enough to allow you guys to get close, however I doubt that with just 2 I'll be able to hold Sandame long enough for you to attack." "Just clear the way wrinkles," asked Naruto. "And leave the rest to us." The sand shinobis gathered outside the cage tower as Gaara slowly walked onto the balcony along with Konkuro and one of the elders. Baki stood below, observing his students. Gaara, don't do anything stupid. The redhead looked around and seeing that most of the Junins arrived already, decided to speak. Shinobis of the sand. I asked you to come here today, because there's something that I need to say, something that all of you should hear. He paused to allow the whispers got through the crowd. As the noises stopped, he continued, before I go any further, I must confess, I am weak. What are you talking about, Kazekage-sama? Yelled on of the female Junins. You're the strongest in the sand. No one can match you. Strength isn't just physical, replied Gaara, lowering his head a bit. The reason why I wanted to become the Kazekage was simple. To protect this village and every single life in it. For that I was prepared to give my life, and yet I failed. I didn't even manage to protect my own sister. It wasn't your fault, Kazekage-sama. Yelled another Kunoichi. There's nothing you could have done. There was, interrupted the redhead. I was just too afraid to make the decision, but now I understand that above everything I'm still just a human. That is why I made a choice. The moment this meeting is over, I'm going into the desert to the place Tamari was taken. Konkuro only smiled under his nose as the elder that stood with them on the balcony yelled, what did you just say, Kazekage-sama? We already told you that keeping you safe is the top priority right now. The Akatsuki is after you. If they are after me, they're most likely after Uzumaki Naruto as well, replied Gaara calmly. Yet that didn't stop him to go after them in order to save Tamari. Gaara-sama, please reconsider. The elder didn't give up. As a Kazekage you cannot allow your personal feelings to cover your vision on what's best for the village. You cannot risk the future of the hidden sand just to save your sibling. I'm not going just to save my sister. For the first time Konkuro, as well as everyone gathered, heard Gaara yelling. I'm going to do what I accepted to do when I became the Kazekage. I'm going to save a shinobi of the sand. It is my duty as protector of this village. You may do to me whatever you desire when I get back. However, my decision will not change. I'll head to the main gate. Who goes with me? The sun was high and the shadows of the three Chunins gotten longer as they observed Deidara standing on a giant clay bird that stood on top of a nearby rock. You're beginning to be really annoying. Yeah, announced the missing nin. I'll be merciful and allow you to surrender before I'll finish you off. Yeah. Sorry, but we don't really have a choice but to turn your offer down, replied Choji with a smirk. But to return your kindness, we give you a chance to surrender too. Guess there's no helping it then. Yeah, sighed Deidara, and with that few smaller clay birds appeared around her. A second later all of them flew right at the trio at an incredible speed. Shikamaru and Ino jumped back at the last second, thanks to which some of the birds crushed against the ground, exploding. Those that survived however kept chasing the two Chunins. Choji on the other hand acted differently. He jumped into the air, and the moment he located himself above the missing nin, he surrounded himself with kunais, and once more using Baika no Jutsu, he performed the meat tank. Oh my! Smirked Deidara as she ordered her bird to go into the air, thus avoiding being hit. As Choji crushed hard into the ground where she was standing just a moment ago, she placed more clay into her hand mouth, and after performing a short set of hand seals, she called out, Ninpu, Nendo Musabu no Jutsu. Instantly clay ropes shoot out of her hand straight at Choji and circling around his legs and hands, trapped the chubby Chunin. This is different from the clay prison, announced Deidara calmly as her smirk widened. With your hands immobile you cannot perform any seals, thus you won't be able to use that stupid tank skill or whatever it was that freed you last time. Yeah well, you're forgetting one thing, reminded Choji. To keep those ropes, you need to stay connected with them, and that's all we need to bring you down. And the moment he said so, Ino jumped onto the ropes and ran straight at the clay user. Deidara's eyes widened as she performed another set of hand seals single-handedly, called out, Ninpu, Nendo Kasui no Jutsu. And in a fracture of a second a huge, clay spike shoot out of her hand, hitting the leaf Kunoichi in the stomach. Ino! Choji yelled in anger as he now tried to free himself from his opponent jutsu. One down, yeah, the clay user smiled. But then the shadow Ino was making changed its shape and shadow spikes shoot right at her. Having no other way out, the missing nin jumped off the bird and landed between Choji, who was now free from the bind. Shikamaru, who still was holding a seal after performing his Kagekui, and Tamari, who was still unconscious laying behind her. "You sick hag," the chubby Chunin gave Deidara a death glare as he looked at Ino laying motionless on the ground just few meters away. "This is war, in case you haven't noticed," replied the missing nin with a smirk. "Victims are unavoidable. Yeah, sorry that this girl was the first one to fall, but fear not, both of you will join her soon enough." "Is that so?" She heard a voice coming from behind, and as she turned around, she noticed Tamari hitting her with her fan and sending her flying against a nearby rock. Deidara's eyes widened at the sight as both Leaf Nin smirked and Ino's body that was still laying motionless on the ground turned into a shadow. Only then did she notice that both Ino's and Shikamaru's shadows were bound together. So that was it, that girl charging at me, creating an opening, that fat ass getting trapped so easily. They all did that so I get careless. "Just as we planned," announced Shikamaru with a smirk as he performed another set of hand seals, and in an instant his shadow merged with Deidara's, trapping her. Blades appeared on the Sandame's hands as the doll blocked the attacks of both Chio's puppets, aiming their swords to destroy it. A moment later the Sand Kunoichi herself appeared behind Sasori and held out her left hand. To all the Leaf Shinobi's surprise, a small bullet shot out of her hand and headed straight at the missing nin, who jumped back in order to avoid it. "You're getting old, Granny," he announced coldly, and the black sand pierced both puppets that were fighting his doll and came right at the defenseless Kunoichi. "Because you attacked me, you stopped paying attention to your dolls, how careless of you," and the moment he said so a black spike cut through Chio's side, making her yell in pain. "Chio Basama." Sakura instantly found herself next to the old puppeteer, treating her with her antidote and medical skills. He got distracted, noticed Naruto as he charged right at the Sandame's doll. "This is our chance," and with that thought he performed his standard technique, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. But just then Sasori realized what was going on and pulled his puppet out of Naruto's reach, making it release more of the black sand. "Stupid brat, do you actually believe I'd lose track of what's going on?" asked the former Sand Nin with a little irritation in his voice. "Get this. Never will a damn pipsqueak like you have a chance to defeat me, and now you're going to pay for your stupidity, Satetsu." Instantly spike shoot from the black cloud yet again and headed right at Naruto and his clones. The one that was leading the attack merely managed to dodge all the spikes that came at him, his clones weren't so lucky on the other hand. Naruto was now trapped between the spike, having very limited area to move. "Will all those spike around you, you can't hope to dodge my next attack," announced Sasori coldly as he looked at the blonde genin. "So what?" replied the Whisker Marks with a smirk. "Because of the same spikes, you can fire anything at me, it won't penetrate the forest you created around me." "You were right," nodded the missing nin, creating a face that could be seen as surprise. But soon it turned back into his typical, emotionless one. "Unless of course, my iron sand can go underground," and at that moment a single, black spike shoot from under the ground and went right through Naruto's body, making him cough out blood. Sasori's eyes widened a second later though, when Naruto disappeared in a cloud of white smoke. "Well, what do you know?" he heard a voice coming from behind, and as he turned around, he saw Naruto standing with his arms crossed just few meters away. "The one who got careless was you after all." Just then the missing nin turned around again and noticed Hinata standing in her battle stance between him and his puppet. "This is it," she announced with her Byakugan activated. A moment later Sasori lost connection with his doll, which got thrown by the white-eyed girl right at the pink-haired Kunoichi, Sakura. "Now. Damn it, I won't manage to reattach my chakra strings." The former Sand Nin cursed in his mind as he observed Sakura standing up and smashing his puppet into hundreds of pieces with a single punch. "That brat, how did she cut through the strings?" "Look at this, Sasori," said Naruto as he joined Hinata. "Your puppet is no more, what will you do now?" And with that his smile widened. Unaware to anyone, someone was observing the whole fight from a nearby mountain. As the blonde with dreadlocks looked down on the battlefield, a smirk appeared on his face. To think those brats were actually able to push Sasori that far. "Oh well, this fight is about to over anyway, guess it's time for me to enter the stage." "Well, you guys turned out to be better than I expected, yeah," announced Deidara, still smiling even though she was caught in Shikamaru's shadow bind. How did you know that Sand Girl will regain consciousness so soon? With that small toxin Sasori Dono gave her, she should stay asleep for few more hours. You still haven't figured that out? Asked Choji with a smirk. Meaning what? Demanded the missing nin. The one who hit you wasn't Tamari, announced Shikamaru, and the moment he said so, the Sand Kunoichi collapsed to the ground unconscious. That's Ino ability. Shintenshin no Jutsu. They heard a female voice, and a second later Ino came out from behind the stone wall that Choji created in order to stop Deidara's spikes before. It allows me to enter another person's body and control it. If you'd make her paralyze, then I wouldn't be able to do anything. However, if it's just some sleeping mixture, I can easily overcome it. I just used Shintenshin on Tamari-san and waited for you to get careless, you hag. In case you haven't noticed, both mine and Ino's shadows were combined for some time now, continued Shikamaru. I used a little trick that I've just learned, called Kagami no Kage. It allows me to form my shadow into a clone similar to those made with the use of typical Bushin. However, at any time, I can switch my real body with the clone, as long as our shadows are combined. So you just used Henge to make the clone look like that blonde girl? Yeah, Deidara figured out the rest. And then you were prepared to switch places in case it'd be able to land a punch on me. Plus, with a Bushin attacking, it was safer for you guys. And furthermore, when a normal Bushin receives a direct hit, it doesn't get dispelled, so even when it got hit with my spike you kept it so I wouldn't figure out your real plan. Clever, yeah. Thanks, replied the lazy Chunin. All that's left is to take care of your hands so you won't cause us more trouble. Ino, would you mind? Give it up, Sasori, Chio said to her grandson. You should see clearly now that you cannot defeat us. I can give you your life back, just come with us. How noble. They all heard a voice, and before they knew it a boy with blonde hair, made into dreadlocks, appeared behind the missing nin. You're talking about that resurrection jutsu that I heard so much about. For what I know it requires the user's life to work. Oh well, doesn't matter, 'cause I'll be taking Sasori. What are you doing here? Asked the red-haired Akatsuki member. Is that a way to treat your old partner? Replied the dreadlocks. Besides, you should know very well what I want, but I suppose it'll take a while to get that information, so would you mind just following me and get this over with? You were never able to beat me, even less now that practically all your dolls got destroyed. Hey, Blondie, Naruto cut in, pointing his finger at the new arrival. Who are you? We were in the middle of a fight and now you show up all of a sudden, saying that you're taking our opponent. He's going with us to the sand for punishment and interrogations. Your friend's already caught Deidara. She'll do for interrogations just as good, responded the older blonde. And the one that I need is Sasori, that clay witch won't do me anything, so you rookies can just go to that pineapple head and his weird comrades. Kengo, you sure haven't changed much, announced Sasori. You really think that even if I were to tell you what you want, it'd give you anything? The moment I get caught, I'll lose any value to the Akatsuki, and even if you will get that brat, it'll change nothing. This is where you are wrong, replied the dreadlocks with a smirk. The brat, I know exactly where he is, but it's not about that, at least not now. What I want is the dragon claw. Are you insane? For the first time Sasori seemed to lose his emotionless face and turned to his former partner. Have you already forgotten what happened the last time? You won't be able to control it. No one can. What I'm planning to do with it is none of your concern, and you're going with me, whether you like it or not. And with that the dreadlock's hand went right through the Akatsuki member's chest. I need you alive, so I can't touch that idiotic seal of yours. However, there is a trick to that too, and with that he quickly performed several hand seals with his free hand only. A little haijutsu I learned in the hidden stone. Your body will be paralyzed until I won't release you. Now, shall we go? And just then he spun on his left foot, barely avoiding a kick aimed at his face, and launched a kick of his own. The moment his foot reached the Whisker Marks boy that charged at him, Naruto's body disappeared in the cloud of white smoke. Kage Bushin, EH. For a brat to master this technique, quite impressive. You're not going anywhere, yelled the loud mouth as his eyes changed their color into red for a split second. What's with those eyes? Wondered Kengo. He's a Jinchuriki. Well, he's from the Hidden Leaf and I never did learn who had the Kyuubi sealed inside, so I guess it's possible. Oh well, doesn't matter. This'll make it only a bit more difficult. and just then he had to jump away in order to avoid a punch from Sakura, who attacked him from behind. "You won't allow me to leave just like that, will you?" "Of course not," replied the pink-haired Kunoichi. "Judging from your headband, you're a missing nin from our village, so it's practically our duty to bring you back. Surrender now and you won't get hurt." "I hate when things get complicated," responded the Dreadlocks. "I really didn't came here to fight any of you guys, and it's not like you could win, but I guess I don't have much choice in this matter. Fine then, I'll teach you few things about the world." "Why am I the one who has to carry her?" asked Shikamaru as he carried Tamari in his arms and ran in front of his teammates. "This is so troublesome." "Yeah, right," Ino, who was running last, sighed internally. He could stop pretending really, and just then she noticed something strange with Deidara, who was carried by Choji. "Hey, what's going on with her?" The lazy Chunin looked back and instantly noticed that the missing nin started swelling. "Choji, drop her now and get out of here." The chubby ninja immediately did as told, and as they ran away, Deidara's body exploded, lifting up tons of dust. "Suicide?" Ino was surprised. "That's a little desperate, and we just lost our source of information." "We'll worry about that later," said Choji. "First let's get Shikamaru's girlfriend to safety and help out Naruto and others." Naruto's eyes became more red and fangs grew longer as he looked around and saw all his companions laying on the ground exhausted. "Damn you," he said through clenched teeth as his glare went to the Dreadlocks. "Damn me," replied Kengo with a smirk. "I didn't want to fight. You guys are the ones who started this. Don't go complaining now." But with that he stopped as he felt chakra gathering in Naruto's right palm. This chakra flow, could this brat? The whisker marks charged right at the missing nin and held his right hand, which carried a large ball of red chakra in front, with a yell, "Kitsune Rasengan." Kengo acted immediately. He stepped to his left, grabbed Naruto's hand, the one that carried the Rasengan with his right hand, and slammed his left palm into the young boy's chest. Kyuubi Vessel's concentration disappeared as he caught out blood and his Rasengan got dispelled. The missing nin instant pushed him back and smashed against a nearby rock, still holding his left hand on the whisker mark's chest. "For a brat like you to master Rasengan," began Kengo. "That's surprising. I thought that the Toad guy and the fourth were the only ones able to perform it. I see you're still a rookie in using it though. Let me tell you something. The Rasengan's strength is dependent on how much chakra you spend on it and the level of control you hold over it. For example, someone with better chakra control than you would be able to create a Rasengan of a similar strength you just did, even when you used Kyuubi's chakra, for example." And with that he held his right hand back, and to Naruto's surprise, a second later a huge ball of blue, spinning chakra appeared in it, creating a small tornado. In the next moment the jutsu got dispelled. "Like so." "How did you?" began the whisker marks, his eyes blue again. "It wasn't easy, since I only saw this technique once and no one even told me how it was performed," replied the Dreadlocks. "But in the end I managed to master it. It's my special surprise for reunion with Itachi." "Who are you?" asked Naruto, still shocked. "I already told you that my name's Kengo and that's pretty much all you need to know," responded the missing nin as he pushed the hand that was holding the younger blonde towards. The impact was so powerful that it seemed like he broke few of the loudmouth's ribs and made him lose consciousness. "After all, you'll die here and now," and with that he picked out his kunai. Just then however he heard Hinata call out, "Naruto-kun." The Dreadlock's eyes widened as he turned his head to look at the white-eyed girl. "What, did you call him?" Naruto-kun," repeated the Hyuga heiress, a little scared and puzzled at the same time. Kengo turned his eyes towards the whisker marks again and slowly released the boy from his grip, thus making him fall motionless with his face to the sand. The missing nin moved him to his back and looked at his face carefully. A few seconds later, a small smirk began to appear on his face. "What do you know? I never thought you'd be still alive." "You know Naruto-kun?" asked Hinata a little quietly. "You might say that," replied Kengo. With that he slowly walked towards Sasori, who was still lying on the sand not moving. "This is an unexpected turn. I even feel like letting you guys live, at least for now," and saying so he picked up the Akatsuki member and turned to Hinata once more. "I guess the old fart made Kakashi his sensei, however I've never heard of Konoha team that'd be formed of 2 girls and 1 boy." "I'm not," originally Naruto-kun's teammate, announced the Hyuga heiress, not sure why she even said that. Normally Naruto-kun was teamed up with Sakura, who's laying over there, and Uchiha Sasuke. You mean Itachi's younger brother? Kengo's smile seemed to widen. This just keeps getting better and better. Well, this explains a bit, so you got transferred as a replacement since that Uchiha brat ran off to Orochimaru, right? How did you know that Sasuke-kun? Began the white-eyed girl, but she was instantly interrupted by the dreadlocks. Tell you what, I'll give you guys a hand. And with that he reached to his pocket, picked out a small scroll and threw it towards Hinata. Tell that dumbass, with that he pointed Naruto with his head, that if he wants to find his teammate, this scroll can prove useful. Since I got Sasori, I don't really need it, I'll get Itachi either way. Why are you doing this? Asked the Hyuga heiress, not sure what else she could say. For fun, responded Kengo. I wonder how this will develop. Besides, if you guys will be able to take this whole Sasuke brat back, it might even be convenient for me, and the moment he said so sand began circling around his legs. The missing nin just barely managed to escape the trap, and as he looked on top of a nearby rock, he spotted a certain red-headed boy with a gourd on his back. Well, if it isn't the current cage, for someone of your status wanting to fight me, I'm honored, and in normal circumstances I'd love to continue this, but I really grew tired of this child's play. So if you don't mind, I'd like to take my leave now. Besides, someone has to take care of these brats and the old hag. Plus, Kakashi-san and his smoking companion could use medical treatment as well, otherwise, they'll surely die. In a moment the number of your opponents will increase, announced the redhead coldly. You stand no chances. Gaara-san. Don't, Hinata asked quietly. He's right. Shio Basama and Naruto-kun require help, and Sakura-chan doesn't look so good either, and he's really powerful. If you'll end up fighting, those who followed you here might get killed. The Godime looked at the white-eyed girl, and after a moment of hesitation, retreated his sand. Kengo only smiled, announced, wise decision, and with that he was gone, along with Sasori. Who was he? Asked Gaara as he teleported himself near the Hyuga heiress. I don't know exactly, replied the girl. But whoever he was able to beat Naruto-kun when he was in that state. He's surely strong. I see, nodded the redhead simply. Well, we'll worry about him later. First we should take care of them, and with that he pointed at the two leaf nins along with Chio. Tamari slowly opened her eyes and tried to sit up. She felt her body got numb and someone placing his hand on her shoulder in order to stop her from moving. She looked in the direction that person stood to see Shikamaru giving her a bored face. Sakura said you might have trouble moving for a while, he announced with a little annoyed voice. Just carrying you here was a bother. Don't be more troublesome than you already are, will ya? And normally that would earn him a hit on the head, but even if she could move, for some reason, the fan user didn't felt like punishing the lazy Chunin this time around. What about my brothers? She asked, placing her head back on the pillow. Kankuro still suffers a bit from the wound he got during your fight with that girl from the Akatsuki, replied the pineapple head. But Gaara is completely fine. That should be expected either way though. He yawned in order to hide a tiny blush appearing on his face as he covered the sand kunoichi with the quilt. What are you doing here anyway? Tamari finally decided to ask, with a small smirk on her face as she noticed Shikamaru's blush anyway. Tsunade-sama got the message from Gaara that you require Konoha's help, responded the lazy shinobi. It was troublesome, but I kinda volunteered my team to participate in the mission. I see, announced the blonde with her smile widening. Thanks then, and with that she winked to the boy, making him blush a bit once more. Whatever, replied the leaf nin as he sat back on the chair placed near her bed, and a second later Kankuro walked inside just to see the lazy Chunin sitting a little pissed and Tamari close to giggling. What the hell happened here? The puppeteer asked himself, positive he wouldn't hear an answer from either his sister or the pineapple head. Naruto clenched his teeth as pain shoot from his chest. He left out a quiet, ugh, as he sat up on his bed and looked around. Once more in a hospital, he sighed internally. Naruto-kun, how are you feeling? He heard Hinata's soft voice, and as he looked a little to his left, he noticed the Hyuga heiress sitting on a chair right next to his bed. Sakura-chan said that you shouldn't be moving too much yet. I'm fine, assured the blonde with a smile. But how are you doing? You got injured by that dreadlocks bastard too. Oh, I just got few bruises, that's all, replied the white-eyed, blushing slightly. And what about Sakura-chan and that old hag? Plus, how are Shikamaru and the rest of them? Well, began Hinata, Sakura is practically fine, it was her that treated us all in the first place. Chiyo-Basama will most likely have to stay in the hospital for few days, but her life is not threatened. Surprisingly, Shikamaru-kun, Choji-kun and Ino-chan are all fine. And Kakashi-sensei and Asuma-san. At that question the Hyuga heiress lowered her head before replying. That's a little different story. Kakashi-san is badly injured and he won't recover too fast. At his current state, any shinobi activities are out of the question. Asuma-san is better, but his injuries weren't minor either. Just then the smoking Junin walked into the room and gave the two kids a weak smile. I see you finally awoke, Naruto, he noticed as he walked over to the bed. That's good, we'll be returning to Konoha the moment you'll feel better. I have to give Tsunade-sama the full report and in this case the sooner I'll do it, the better. Asuma-san, began Hinata quietly. It's about that other boy, right? The smoker only nodded. Who is he? He said that he knew Naruto-kun, and I'm afraid I'm not allowed to say anything in this case, without Godime-sama's permission, interrupted the Junin. Sorry Hinata, but Kengo's case is a bit complicated one, but I'd need you to tell me what he told you, anything can prove useful. Right now? Asked the white-eyed girl. No, there's no rush here, assured Asuma, smiling gently to her and then throwing a quick glare at Naruto. But I'd like to know before we get back to the hidden leaf. The girl nodded and the smoker walked back towards the door. I guess I'll leave you youngsters to yourselves then. I still need to talk to Tamari-san anyways. Oh, by the way Naruto, if you want to see Kakashi, Sakura announced that you can, but don't tire him with a long talk, he needs a lot of rest, and with that he left the room. Deidara walked through the desert completely worn out. She used the rocks that she passed by to prop herself in order not to fall onto the ground. As she took another step, she felt someone tailing her and without even turning around, she asked, "Are you just gonna follow me around or are you going to help me out, Zetsu?" The man with jaws around his head walked towards her and with an emotionless face he replied, "I wasn't sent here to help you out, you failed, how disappointing. Not only you didn't get Shukaku nor Kyuubi, but also Sasori was taken as a prisoner. And are you aware of the fact who took him?" The other missing nin didn't answer, so the kunoichi assumed he didn't. It was Kengo, yeah. Kengo. Zetsu's eyes seemed to widen slightly at the mentioning of that name. But why would he of all people? I have no idea, admitted Deidara. I just heard those Konoha brats mentioning his name when they were going back to the Suna, but whatever reason for showing up he could have, this entry to the game requires us to change our plans a bit, yeah. Kengo appearance is definitely not something we can be happy about, nodded the other, missing nin. We must report this to the leader immediately, the Kyuubi can prove difficult to get now. Naruto stood on top of the hospital roof and looked at the endless desert that disappeared behind the horizon while the sky turned red. He lowered his head slightly, letting out a sigh. He rubbed his chest as small pain shoot through it. He said he knew Naruto-kun, Hinata's words echoed in his head. Who was that deadlock guy? He asked himself, clenching his fist. After all that, Naruto-kun, you should go back to bed. He suddenly heard a soft voice and as he turned around, he saw the white-eyed girl heading towards him. Sakura-chan will send you back to the hospital for longer if she'll catch you here, she joked, smiling to him. Thanks, but I've already recovered, the blonde assured her. I just felt like taking a walk. The Hyuga heiress lowered her sight slightly and asked slowly, carefully choosing the words. It's about that boy, isn't it? The blonde stood there for a moment and then nodded. Even Kakashi-san and Asuma-san together couldn't defeat him, so it's only understandable that we, who are not even Junin, could not withstand his strength. You should worry about that, Naruto-kun. The Kyuubi vessel only turned around and smiled widely to the white-eyed girl. You know me too well, Hinata-chan, he announced, laughing. No I don't, she replied quietly, so that the whisker marks wouldn't hear it. The next day, the 8th-leaf shinobi stood in front of the gorge that led to the entrance of the hidden sand village An. Well, Asuma had to give Kakashi a piggy bank ride. walking them to the exit where Gaara, along with his siblings, Baki and Chio. "I believe this is the time for us to take our leave," announced the smoking Junin as he took a quick glare at Kakashi laying on his back. "I still need to report to Tsunade-sama. I wish you all the best, Kazekage-sama," and with that he turned to the redhead boy, who merely nodded. Sakura saw the old Kunoichi had a worried look on her face and came closer to the Sand Nin, placing her hand on her shoulder. "You'll fulfill your goal, Chiyo-sama. I promise that if we'll find Sasori, we'll take him as prisoner," and with that she gave the puppeteer a smile. The older Kunoichi looked at her a little surprised at first, but then smiled back. "You really are a lot like Tsunade, I know, not just with beauty and skills. Good luck in your quest, Sakura." The pink-haired girl nodded and then turned to Kankuro. "Your wound should soon heal, if you won't push it, that is," and with that she patted him on the back, almost making the puppeteer felt overdue to his exhaustion. "You'll be coming back sooner this time, won't you, lazy bones?" Tamari asked Shikamaru as she whacked him in the back of his head. "If not, I'll come to your village, seeking your pineapple head, and believe me, you don't want that to happen," she added with a smirk. "Whatever," replied the lazy Chunin, with hands in his pockets, but Hinata could swore she saw him blushing slightly. "Coming here would be troublesome, but letting you run loose in Konoha will put me in even more trouble, I guess." "Well, since we have this all, farewell, thing done with," began Naruto a little nervous. "Let's just head back and," but just then his eyes widened as he saw Gaara held out his hand right in front of him. The blonde looked at it, shocked, and finally, after he realized what just happened, he held out his. A second later the two Jinchuriki shook their hands and Hinata smiled under her nose. Few moments later the Konoha shinobi were already heading back to their village and the redhead walked a little further from his companions, to observe the leaf nins becoming small dots on the horizon. "One thing troubles me though," announced Baki when Naruto and the others left. "Since we were dealing with the Akatsuki, who are casing after the demon vessels, why would Tsunade send that blonde to help us? He is a Jinchuriki as well. Isn't that obvious?" replied Chio with a chuckle. "What do you mean, Chiyo-sama?" asked Kankuro confused. "That blonde brat carries the same burden as Gaara," she responded calmly. "What kind of horror they both had to go through we can only imagine. The sad thing is that in this world only Jinchuriki can understand one another. I believe that was that old hag's reason," and with that she turned around and headed back to her village slowly. "Indeed," the boy puppeteer agreed in his mind as he looked at his younger brother. "You always hid your emotions behind that sand mask. The way you acted it'd seem that you never really cared, but what lied behind your barrier? The only one who knows is that Uzumaki kid, but you two found people you can call important. Gaara, isn't that the reason you took off that mask today?" And with that he smiled slightly as he walked over to the redhead and placed his hand on his shoulder. "Gaara, we should get back, you have duties." The Shukaku vessel turned around and nodded. Kankuro instantly saw a small smile on his brother's face. "Uzumaki Naruto," the puppeteer repeated the blonde's name. "Thank you." 3 days later in Konoha. "So that's how it is?" asked Tsunade as she read Asuma's report and looked at the scroll Kengo gave Hinata. "Heaven and Earth Bridge in the Grass Country. In 2 weeks from today, we cannot be sure if this isn't a trap. People like Kengo, they're not very trustworthy." "If it's a trap," responded Sakura with determination showing on her face, "we'll just have to fight, and speaking of that, who is this Kengo guy?" Hinata said he knew Naruto. Tsunade exchanged glance with Jiraiya, who was propping himself against the wall in the corner. The Godime looked back at the student and replied slowly, "Kengo is, or rather was, one of the best-looking shinobi in the Hidden Leaf. He became a missing even not long after become genin, in the age of 6. 6. Ino's eyes widened. "How can such a kid become a missing nin?" "Well," began the Hokage, "some things happened, and I guess he couldn't saw the reason why they did, but being just a kid, I'm sure Sarutobi-sensei would allow him to return, if he wanted to. He never came back to Konoha on his own free will. After he joined the Akatsuki, it was official that he was lost to us. But what I'm asking," Sakura kept pushing, "is who he is." "Such information is not one you need," replied Tsunade a little angry. "You should concentrate on preparing to go to the Grass Country. Since Kakashi is immobilized for the moment, I'll look for a substitute. Also, I'd advise you try finding the third member for your team, cause I'm afraid just you and Naruto won't be enough. Not a problem, announced the blonde with confidence. Hey, Shikamaru, wanna join? And so he turned to the lazy Chunin who seemed to be sleeping as he stood. The pineapple haircut boy opened one of his eyes and looked at the Kyuubi vessel. Sorry Naruto, but I can't, he responded. It's troublesome, but I'll be responsible for the coming Chunin exam and I won't be able to leave the village for a month. Yeah, and no use asking us, added Choji with a sad voice. Tsunade-sama already assigned us a new mission and it's likely we'll be able to return in 2 weeks' time. How about you and your team, Hinata-chan? With that Naruto turned to the Hyuga heiress. That won't be possible either, the godime responded for the white-eyed girl before she was able to say a word. Because I have a very important mission for them as well, and with that she gave the Hyuga heiress 2 scrolls. Hinata, give these to Kurenai, one of the scrolls will give her details about the mission, the other is not to be opened before you reach your destination, is that understood? The white-eyed girl only nodded. Actually, you guys can help them out with this. With those words the Hokage turned to Naruto and Sakura. If you were to aid them, they might return faster than expected and could help you out during your mission to retrieve Sasuke. What did you say? Count me in, yelled the blonde instantly and Hinata only smiled slightly. Sorry then, but I think I'll pass, announced the pink-haired Kunoichi. Naruto, I'll make all the preparations for our mission in the grass country, please return safe. You guys, with that she smiled to her teammate and the white-eyed girl. In the wind I wasn't much help while fighting Sasori, if I am to go against Orochimaru, I need to become stronger. Well then, you guys will be leaving tomorrow morning, the godime turned back towards Naruto and Hinata. You shouldn't encounter any shinobi attacks on the way, but this is still an A-rank mission so I expect you'll put your best effort into it, you're dismissed. And so all the young shinobi, along with Asuma, began to leave. Right on, Oba, cheered the blonde and thanks to that he found himself outside as the first one, by flying through the wall after receiving a punch from Tsunade. Was it wise, asked Jiraiya a little doubtful, not only to send Naruto, even though the Akatsuki is after him, but even that Hyuga girl, don't you remember what happened all those years back? I do remember, replied the godime calmly. And pretty much that's the reason why I'm sending that girl. I'd give this mission to Guy, but his team has a mission as well, so they're unreachable at the moment. Well, you're the Hokage, responded the Toad Sannin. So the decision is yours to make, however keep in mind that I lost trace of both the Akatsuki and Kengo, so by sending Naruto far away from the village, you're taking a great risk, and with that he jumped outside the window. The next morning, Naruto stood in front of the village gate, kicking a small rock, awaiting for Hinata and her team to arrive. Finally, after a few minutes, Shino and Kiba appeared, but there was still no sight of the Kunoichi. Where could they be? Asked the blonde in a loud voice. Probably putting makeup or something, joked the dog ninja. Don't you know what girls are like? Especially now that you'll be accompanying us on the mission I don't suppose we'll see Hinata until she decides she looks perfectly. What do you mean by that? What a pinhead. Kiba sighed internally and was about to answer, but just then the Junin arrived along with the Hyuga heiress. Okay, listen up, began Kurenai as the Chunin along with one genin lined up in front of her. Our mission is quite simple to explain, however you guys shouldn't expect it to be a walkover. To make long things short, we are to go to the Cloud Country, where we'll meet up with the guide from the Kumo. He'll lead us to his village so that we could give this. With that she held out a golden scroll that Tsunade forbid Hinata to open. To their rakage, if everything goes well, we should be able to get back in a week or so. Certainly not a mission that can be classified as exciting, whined the dog shinobi, but the Junin just ignored his comment. With a quick check of equipment, the 5 shinobi went towards the Cloud Country. As they passed the Cloud Country borders, they immediately noticed the surrounding changed. Even though it was still forest, the land seemed more exotic with all the palms and other trees that spread their huge leaves over the travelers' heads, protecting them from rain that fell at least once every 3 days around here. All that made Kiba recall the time he went to the rain country for his Chunin exam, where rain fell from the sky daily. As Hinata raised her sight at the sky, she noticed that it was dark blue with only black clouds floating over it. Birds weren't flying today, so most likely the rain will fall down pretty soon. In the shadows of the trees, she noticed many animals hiding with reptiles and amphibians trying to find their way to some open landscape. Snakes were circling around the trees and frogs began their concert, awaiting the water to come from the sky. The white-eyed girl looked at Shino. Even though he never shown it, he didn't like rain. Due to his style of fighting, during storms his effectiveness decreased, and what's more, he just didn't like when sky was black. After a long travel they finally arrived at a small village that was just the concentration of few wooden huts with the forest surrounding it from all sides. A little further to the north the road went up the hills, which were becoming mountains miles later. "This is our meeting spot," announced Kurenai as they walked in the middle of a round square, located in the center of the village. "We're a little early though. Probably our contact didn't appear yet. You guys can take a rest for now, but meet back up with me here in about 3 hours. "Understood, Kurenai-sensei," yelled Kiba as he saluted and turned to his little dog. "Let's check out those bushes. What did you say, Akamaru?" The dog barked loudly and the two sprinted into the forest, disappearing between the trees a second later. "He sure is cheerful today," noticed Hinata quietly. "Probably he's just excited about new terrain to explore," replied Shino and then took a quick glare at Naruto. "I guess I'll go too. Maybe I could find some rare bugs around," and without another word he went into the bushes as well. "So that leaves just the two of us," announced Naruto as he placed his hands behind his head. "Let's grab something to eat. I wonder if they have any ramen around here," but then he looked at the Hyuga heiress and instantly added, "Unless you have other suggestions, Hinata-chan." The two walked into a close-by inn in which the light was even dimmer than outside. Some candles were burning here and there, along with a chandelier just under the ceiling. It didn't help much though. Even the fireplace in the corner seemed pointless. The moment they entered, a man with a hooded on his head, which shadow covered his face, turned slightly to look at them. Hinata looked over her shoulder at the observer, but he immediately got back to eating. The white-eyed girl stared at the mysterious figure for a moment and then followed Naruto to the bar. "Ramen," ordered the blonde as he slammed his fist on the deck. Meanwhile, far away, locating unknown. "This is most disappointing," announced the shadow figure of the Akatsuki leader as Zetsu stood in front of him. Not only didn't capture even one Jinchuriki, but also Sasori got taken by Kengo. This is certainly most inconvenient. How is Deidara's condition? "She should be fine," replied the jawhead shinobi. "She's just exhausted. It'd seem that those Konoha brats gave her a hard time. What's worrying though is Kengo's appearance. Since he started to act again, I believe it'd be better for Itachi to sat this out." "He will not," the leader interrupted him quickly. "With Sasori out, at least for the time being, we cannot allow ourselves to lose another member. For the time being, tell Itachi and Kisame to concentrate on grabbing the Biju in the hidden mist." "And what about the Kyuubi?" "That one should be taken care of soon enough," responded the leader simply, thus ending their conversation. Back to the village in the Cloud Country. Naruto and Hinata sat on a branch while eating their bowls of ramen. The Hyuga heiress looked towards the dark sky and then at her crush. "Dark clouds always seem to gather around you, Naruto-kun. Will I ever be strong enough to fight by your side?" "Hinata-chan." The blonde stopped eating and looked at the kunoichi. "There's something I wanted to tell you for some time now, but somehow I never really got a chance." The girl instantly blushed and turned away a bit, to hide the fact that her face reddened. "Back there, in the Suna, you were right. Instead of blaming myself for what happened, I should just try getting stronger. It's just that sometimes I'm too dumb to realize certain things," and with that he gave her a wide smile. "You have no idea how right you are, Naruto-kun." The girl sighed internally as her face turned back to normal color before the whisker marks continued. "However, I did meant what I said back then," and instantly the Hyuga heiress's face turned back to being red. "It's not exactly like that," she finally replied. "My Byakugan." "I don't think you really need it," he interrupted her as he filled his mouth with noodles. "The way I see it, you can tell what others are feeling anytime. Guess it's because you always care about others more than about yourself." "I couldn't see through your mask," she reminded him, lowering her sight. "Nobody's perfect," Ha announced, and a small grin appeared on his face. "Except me maybe," he joked, making her giggle. "But to say the truth, I think I preferred for people not to see how I felt. I can't really explain it, however that's of no importance now. Living in the past will only make you lose your path. What counts most is here and now, and the fact that you accepted me the way I am, the fact that all of you did, that is important to me, and for that, thank you," and with that he wrapped his hand around her, making her blush an even deeper red. "So, I see Kyuubi is having a good time." The both heard a voice coming from behind, and as they turned around, they saw a man with spiky, silver hair and golden eyes standing on top of a nearby roof. He had a big, cross-like scar on his left cheek and was wearing an outfit similar to Kakashi's, only his was black. He wore a violet waistcoat on it and had a steel chain wrapped around his left shoulder. Hinata also spotted a golden hilt of the sword sticking from behind his back. Suddenly there was a flash of light and a loud roar. A second later rain began to fall down as thunder was heard again. "I should consider myself lucky, I almost lost hope of running into the likes of you." "This guy," began Naruto as he stared at the man. "I don't see any Hite 8, and he's not wearing that stupid black and red overcoat, he's not from the Akatsuki. So what in the world would he wish from me? Who are you and what do you want from Naruto-kun?" asked Hinata calmly, slowly going into her fighting stance. "My name is Hiraise Kyuki," responded the man. "And as for what I want from this, Naruto was it. To answer as simple as I can, I want him dead." Naruto jumped back, thus avoiding his torso being cut by the katana's blade. The moment his feet touched the ground, he bended back and propping his right hand on the wet surface, he lunged a kick aimed at the incoming opponent. Kyuki bended over as he kept running, thus making the blonde's foot go right above his head. When he got close enough to the whisker marks, the mysterious boy attacked with his katana yet again, this time aiming to cut the Kyuubi vessel's hand. Having no other alternative, Naruto used his right hand to bounce to the ground. When he found himself in midair, he instantly picked out several kunai and turned to look at his opponent before unleashing the rain of knives at him, just to have all his weapons get deflected by Kyuki's sword. As he landed on a nearby roof, the whisker marks breathed heavily, yet didn't took his eyes off his opponent. "What the hell is your problem?" he yelled pissed. "I never even saw you before, and judging from the look of your clothes you're not the member of the Akatsuki, so what's the deal?" "By Akatsuki you mean those guys in red and black robe?" asked Kyuki, his face as cold as it could be. "I have a score to settle with those punks as well. They took the Yonbi away just when I was about to finish it off, a pity." "Yonbi?" Hinata's eyes widened at hearing that. But wasn't that the four-tailed beast that attacked the Hidden Rain village? Why would he fight it as well? "Seems like you have some serious issues," announced Naruto, still not taking his eyes off the swordsman. "What the hell are you, a Jinchuriki hunter or something?" "Boy, you're quick," replied Kyuki with a smirk. "But I prefer to be called Demon Hunter. The way you put it, someone might even think the likes of you are human," and with that his face became grim as he jumped straight at the blonde with his katana ready to attack again. Acting on instinct, Naruto picked out another kunai and bended his knees a bit. The moment the demon hunter came close enough with an intent to pierce right through his chest, the blonde hit the blade of his katana from below, thus making the sword go towards the sky, right above his head. Before Kyuki noticed what was going on, the blonde hit his hand that was holding the katana with an opened palm in the place his elbow was, thus making the sliver-haired boy drop his weapon. The instant his sword struck into the roof, the demon hunter jumped away and landed safely on another rooftop, right next to the one Naruto was standing on. Without wasting a second, Kyuki picked out a shuriken and threw it straight at the blonde. Seeing that his opponent intended to deflect the shinobi star with the kunai he still held in his hand, he smirked and performed a quick chain of hand seals, ended with a cry, "Shuriken Kage Bushin no Jutsu." Naruto's eyes widened as the single shuriken that was coming at him now split into tens. Having no way to block them all, he jumped to his left in hope to avoid the incoming shinobi stars. However, as it seemed he succeeded in dodging, he noticed Kyuki picking out another weapon, this time a long, metal chain ended with a large blade. I'm not good when it comes to describing weapons, I'm afraid. To all Bleach fans I can say that I did imagine that blade being similar to the blade of Ichigo's sword. The blonde's eyes widened even more as the demon hunter unleashed his chain, making it hit all the shuriken that was coming at the Kyuubi vessel, making them change directions, and some managed to struck into the loudmouth's body anyway as he was unable to dodge while still in midair. The leaf nin clenched his teeth to not let out a yell of pain, yet he still collapsed to the ground as pain shoot through his leg, with had two shurikens struck in it, as he tried to land on his feet. The moment he lost his balance, Kyuki threw another handful of shinobi stars, which came straight at the blonde. But before either of the shuriken reached him, a sudden, yellow blur appeared in their way. It was Hinata, who, by creating a chakra sphere around her, stopped all the incoming shinobi stars, and in the next moment, by spinning around, she blew all of the weapons away. "Oh, a Hyuga," Kyuki stated simply. "Well, I guess I should figure as much from your eyes. Some like you is the last one I'd expect to appear in the lighting country. I suppose you're not gonna stand aside, are you?" "Of course not," replied the white-eyed girl with a confident voice. The demon hunter only smirked and announced, "Oh well, it's your life," and the moment he said so, Hinata's eyes widened as her Byakugan allowed her to notice tags wrapped around the kunai laying all around. In an instant she jumped towards Naruto and pushed him away as the tags got activated. A ninjutsu trap, the Hyuga heiress noticed as she slowly got back to her feet. The moment she raised her head, she saw the blade on Kyuki's chain coming right at her. This time however it was the Kyubi vessel that took action. The blonde immediately stood before Hinata and grabbed the incoming chain in the place the blade ended, and mimicking the kunoichi he began spinning around. As the chain started to wrap around the whisker marks, Kyuki felt that he's being pulled, and in the next instant he flew straight at the two leaf nins, along with his weapon. "Hinata-chan, now!" yelled Naruto as the demon hunter got close enough. The Hyuga heiress acted immediately and stepped forward. Before Kyuki knew it, he received a hit from an opened palm in the chest, which made him let go of the chain and send him flying few meters back. The silver-haired boy slowly struggled back to his feet. Blood dripped from his mouth as he whipped it with his hand. "Gentle fist," the boy said to himself. "She is a Hyuga after all. If that attack would hit my heart I'd probably get a fusion and this fight would be over. That white-eyed girl, she missed on purpose," and with that he threw a quick glare at Hinata. "Oh, man, that guy's standing back up," noticed Naruto with a disappointed voice, and then called after Kyuki. "Hey, don't you know when you're beaten?" "I do," replied the demon hunter simply. "But this case is different. I'll let you on a little secret. When it comes to Jinchuriki, I don't care whether I die or live. All that matters is killing the beast, and if that means losing my life in the process, well, we all have to die someday. What difference does it make?" "Surely there'd be someone pained by your death," announced Hinata. "Seems as though even with those famous eyes of yours you can't see everything," responded Kyuki emotionless as his eyes stared into space. "There is no one on this world that cares whether I live or die, and it's all thanks to the likes of you," and with that he looked at the blonde genin with his face remaining without emotions. In the next moment he reached to his hostiles, and in an instant tens of kunai, combined with each other by a wire. Before the leaf nins knew it, all the knives got launched straight at them, but what surprised them is that when Kyuki moved his hands, it seemed to affect the route on which the weapons were flying, and only then did they notice thick wires still attached to the incoming blades. The moment they realized what was going on, they found themselves surrounded by the incoming kunai. They had nowhere to dodge. "I can't use the Kaden yet," Hinata reminded herself with her eyes widen, but just then she noticed her crush going quick through the chain of hand seals. "Fuden. K's Tikiatsu," he called out, and in an instant a huge cyclone started circling around him and the white-eyed girl, leaving them safe in its middle. Seeing that, Kyuki only smirked, moved his hands again, manipulating the kunai again. Hinata looked at her crush impressed, and then, having her bloodline limit still activated, saw through the wind currents and noticed what was happening. "Naruto-kun, he's trying to wrap us in those wires," she announced, making the blonde act immediately. The Kyubi vessel reached for his own kunai and threw them right into the cyclone as its speed decreased a little. The moment all his knives found themselves spinning with the wind, the loudmouth waited for the right moment, and when he saw it, he instantly dropped the jutsu. Kyuki's eyes widened as suddenly the cyclone disappeared and tens of kunai flew in all the directions, cutting the strings, thanks to which he was able to control the flight at his own knives. "Those two, they're pretty good," and the moment he thought that, he spotted something with the corner of his eyes. Instantly he jumped into the air, thus avoiding a small tornado that came right at him from behind. But as he found himself in midair, he noticed the exact replica of the attack he just dodged coming at him from the same direction the first assault came. Having no way to avoid the next tornado, Kyuki acted immediately and bit his finger, making it bleed a little. In the next moment he picked out a small scroll and wrote something on it with his blood, using his thumb. Before anyone knew what was exactly going on, a large halberd appeared in Demon's Hunter hand, which he used to block the incoming attack. The silver-haired boy was sent flying back, with his weapon blown into pieces, yet he himself stayed mainly unharmed. Kiba-kun. Hinata was relieved to see that it was her teammate and his partner that came to the rescue. "Why are you here?" "I saw that weird cyclone appearing in the town and figured something happened," replied the dog ninja, not taking his eyes off Kyuki, who slowly got back to his feet. "Who is that guy anyway?" he asked, turning to Naruto. "Another fan of yours," he joked. "You might say that," responded the blonde. "He just don't care to take me alive, more like it's the other way around in this case," and with that he raised his sight back at the silver-haired boy, who was now walking towards the three young shinobi. "Another one," sighed the demon hunter. "How annoying," and immediately he wrote once more on his scroll, this time making a long, metal lash with small spikes all over it appear in his hand. In the next second the lash got unleashed straight at the dog ninja, who was forced to jump into the air in order to avoid the attack. "Fall for the same thing I did a moment ago, how pathetic," announced Kyuki as he moved his hand, making the lash go up, straight at the defenseless Kiba. But before the scourge reached the leaf nin, Naruto appeared between him and the lash, stopping the attack with his hands. In the next instant another blonde jumped out of nowhere and jumping of the first whisker marks back flew straight at the demon hunter, making the first blonde disappear in the cloud of white smoke. Kyuki only smirked as he retreated his lash and began spinning it above his head, creating a solid shield, that'd reap Naruto the moment he'd touch it. But to the silver boy's surprise, Hinata appeared right before him on bended legs, making the lash spin right above her head as well and aimed her open palm into the weapon master's chest again. "Not this time, cutie," Kyuki thought to himself with a smirk as he bended to his left and propped his left hand on the ground. In the next moment his feet left the ground, thus making the white-eyed girl hit only air. Using that instant, the silver-haired boy spun on his hand and landed a kick in the back of the kunoichi's head, before landing on his feet. "So, the Kyuubi used two bushins to draw my attention away from the Hyuga that charged at me, so where's the original? Your ass is cooked." He heard Naruto's voice coming from below him and before he knew it, the blonde's hands shoot from underground and grabbed his ankles. "Doden, Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu." And in the next second silver-haired boy's head was sticking from above the ground with the rest of his body dig under it. "To fall for the lamest trick ever," sighed the demon hunter. "How careless of me. Yeah well, you can't move, so I guess this fight is over," announced the whisker marks as he bended over a little to be as close to Kyuki's level as he could. "You demons really tend to be too confident," stated the silver-haired boy with a smirk. In the next moment Hinata's eyes widened as she only managed to call out, "Naruto-kun, watch out." Instantly the blonde jumped back right before a huge explosion covered the area he and Kyuki was, blowing the demon hunter away. "That guy," Naruto thought to himself with clenched teeth and widened eyes. He activated an explosive tag to free himself from the ground. Even though he knew he'll take most of the damage, he really doesn't care about his own life. And with that he landed on the same roof where Kyuki's sword was struck in. "What?" Now the demon hunter's eyes widened. "But why?" he began, just to have his thought interrupted by the voice that came from behind him. "If you're wondering why your ninjutsu trap didn't went off, I'll tell you that I ordered my bugs to take care of those tags of yours, so that they wouldn't be a bother as we continue." The silver-haired boy turned around and saw Shino standing right behind him, with two swarms of bugs circling around his hands. "Insects." Kyuki's eyes narrowed at the sight. "He's probably the member of that creepy Konoha clan I heard so much about. This is getting really tiresome. With those three I still had a chance, but having to fight all four of them and with the damage I took from that explosive tag, my chances at defeating them all equals 0, and with that thought he turned towards Naruto. "Seems like I have only one option left." And to everyone's surprise the silver-haired boy threw a kunai straight at the Kyuubi vessel, making the blonde jump back. Instantly the demon hunter performed a standard jutsu and before anyone knew it, he appeared in the place the knife struck the roof. He pulled out his katana out of the roof and pierced straight through the whisker mark's torso. "Game over, Kyuubi," he announced with a smirk, but then his eyes widened as his target disappeared in the cloud of white smoke. Another Kage Bushin. While his view was still covered by the white smoke, the real Naruto charged at him with Rasengan ready and hit the demon hunter's torso with the blue chakra orb, sending him flying into a nearby wall, spinning widely in the process. Kyuki tried to get back to his feet, only to find out his body didn't listen to him at all. The blonde landed right beside him and just looked into his eyes. The silver-haired boy sighed and announced with a smirk, "Well, this time you really defeated me, just finish this already." "No," replied Naruto simply, making the demon hunter's eyes look surprised at him. "Right now there's no way you can fight back, you're harmless. If I were to kill you right now, I'd only prove that I am what you called me, a monster. But the truth is, above what I carry inside, I'm human, just like you. I don't know what the Jinchuriki did to you that you hate us so much, but I'm not gonna judge you because of that. Even in my own village there are tens of people who hate me thanks to that fox bastard that's sealed inside me. I only hope that this will make you think a little," and with that he turned around and walked away. "Well, he should get going," announced Kiba, breaking the silence that felt between them. "It's almost time to meet with Kurenai-sensei, let's go," and without another word the blonde followed him with Hinata close behind. Shino however stayed behind and gave Kyuki a quick glare, before saying, "I do not know how you knew Naruto had the nine-tailed sealed inside him, but know this, even though he does carry a demon inside, he has already proven to be more human than some people I know. It's true that you can't judge people just on the outside, but sometimes even the first impression of the inside can be false, especially if it is the way you blindly see," and with that said he followed his companions as well. "A Jinchuriki that has friends," the silver-haired boy looked to the sky. "That I haven't seen before. And he is different than Yonbi, is that what you wanted me to understand, Hananesan?" "Where were you?" Kurenai asked with her arms crossed as she spotted her subordinates walking towards her. "I've been waiting for 5 minutes already. Shinobi should allow himself to be late. Our contact is already waiting in the tavern." "Sorry, Kurenai-sensei," Hinata apologized. "Naruto-kun and I were attacked by a strange boy and Kiba-kun and Shino-kun aid us in the fight," but at this point the Junin interrupted her. "Doesn't matter, as long as you guys are safe. Well, follow me, that Cloud Nin seems really impatient, so best just not keep her waiting," and so she headed towards the nearby tavern and Kiba exchanged glances with Naruto as they got surprised by the word, her. As they walked into the tavern, Kurenai sat down at the table at which a young girl their age was already sitting. The Kumo Kunoichi had long, blonde hair, clipped in a ponytail, green eyes and she used dark lipstick. The girl wore a black top with short sleeves, made in a way it revealed her navel. Naruto noticed both her hands were wrapped in bandages. Her legs was covered by tight, black pants, wrapped in bandages around her ankles. The Hite-8 with the cloud symbol could be spotted on her forehead. The moment Kiba and the Kyuubi vessel spotted her, they began to blush slightly, making Hinata looked at first surprised at the whisker marks and the next moment a little disappointed. The Cloud Kunoichi gave the blonde an interested stare, making his face turn even more red and the white-eyed girl even more angry with her than she already was. That sensation just now, the Cloud Nin thought to herself. Could it be? Meanwhile, not far away from the town, two figures stood in the treetops, observing the village where the Leaf Shinobi were at the moment. "Well, ain't that a surprise?" announced the first one, wearing black robe with red clouds, whose face was covered in the shadows on the treetops on which branch he stood. "This is most convenient, wouldn't you agree, Hidan?" "He is not our target," replied the other figure, dressed in the similar way as his companion. "We didn't came here for the Kyuubi, that brat's presence here is unwanted." "Don't be like that," responded the first figure. "We can get 2 birds with 1 stone and fix Sasori and Deidara's mistake. Besides, with having 2 beasts against us, there's a higher chance I'll get killed and I know that you wouldn't mind that." The Kumo Kunoichi led them towards the mountains. They followed the trail that allowed them to reach the bottom of the tops. From there they took a narrow route made in the mountain that led up. As they continued their journey, sometimes forcing their backs against the cold, mountain walls, they finally reached the end of the trail, which was a gorge with a pile of rocks at its end. The Cloud Nin however kept moving forward, and the moment she came close enough to the pile, she bite her finger and draw a symbol with her blood on the largest rock, that was the most out front of all. To the Konoha shinobi's surprise, the huge stone began to lift itself up, until a wide entrance appeared before everyone's eyes. The blonde kunoichi just walked inside without saying a word, and the leaf nins soon followed. The moment Shino, who was the last one walking, went inside, the boulder got back to its place, leaving them in total darkness. The Kumo guide only performed a quick set of hand seals, and in an instant electricity shoot from her hand, lighting up a torch as it escaped the kunoichi's arm and hit it. As they kept on walking, they went deeper into the cave. Hinata shivered slightly as a cold breeze hit them softly. She looked around, and in a dim light of the torch she was able to see a lot of stalactites and stalagmites. Near the walls there were a lot of puddles of water, which dripped from the sling. She giggled softly as she saw Akamaru get hit by the water drop and shook his body to get rid of it from his fur. The walls were gray and damp, while the passages leading to the other parts of the tunnel were usually small and narrow, sometimes located quite high, and the only way to reach them was to use the natural stairs leading to the top of the tunnel. Yugito-san, Hinata began shyly as she walked over to the kunoichi leading them. I wanted to ask you about this tunnel. I mean, the route we had to pass to get here was pretty long and not an easy one. Is this the only way to your village? Because if it is, I was wondering, how do you receive missions from customers? They send it by birds or contact one of our shinobi that always appear in the nearby towns at least once a week, replied the Cloud Nin coldly, without even turning towards the Hyuga heiress and keeping her sight on the trail. Finally they reached the end of the tunnel, which turned out to be a large, wooden gate with the kanji symbol for thunder painted in the middle. Two guards gave the group a suspicious glare, but noticing Yugito they immediately began opening the gates, shivering slightly. Naruto noticed the look in their eyes. It was the same look he kept receiving all those years. The Kumo kunoichi led them through the gate, and the leaf shinobi finally saw the hidden cloud village. The town was separated into few districts, each placed on the different mountain. The only way to get from one district to another expect the body flicker technique, were long, wooden bridges that connected the mountains. However, in most cases one district was connected with only 3 or 4 other. The bridges weren't really stable, and a stronger blow of wind would certainly make them swing from left to right. Being located high in the mountains made the air in the village chilly. Hinata shivered again as another breeze blew. Once the wind calmed down, she looked up only to see the tops of the highest towers disappear behind the white cloud that covered the tops of the mountains. Most of the buildings had at least few floors, and their roofs were usually sharp. When Kurenai asked Yugito about this, she replied that in such a place where wind blows hard, it's easier to keep your balance on such roofs as you can always grab the spiky part. The buildings themselves were usually gray, some with red and green, flat roofs, but the Hyuga heiress also spotted some symbols here and there, written on the walls with golden paint. Plants didn't grow here, and as Yugito announced, all the farms were located below. Water on the other hand was not a problem. Every district had its own water source, usually in the form of a lake, but in some places a waterfall was just coming out of the mountain, as Shino assumed, being the beginning of some river, as the water went down the streets with the special tunnels and fall below, disappearing in the white mist covering the view of the valleys under the village. The Cloud Kunoichi led them through the city towards the Raikage's palace. It turned out to be a 3-level estate built, like pretty much every building in the village, from gray stone. Once they passed the gates, they entered a rocky garden, where stones were placed all around, taking different shapes. Hinata also noticed statues standing here and there. After a short walk they reached massive, wooden doors, decorated with the eagle drawn in golden paint in the middle of them. At this point one of the guards took the role of the guide, though Yugito still assisted them. They walked through the narrow passages, which all looked the same at least in Naruto's opinion, maybe except paintings here and there, most representing the face of famous Kumo shinobi. Hinata, being a member of a noble and powerful clan, actually managed to recognize some of the face, earning from time to time a nod from Yugito. When they finally reached the Raikage's office, the guard knocked twice on the door, and after hearing, "Enter," the 6 shinobi walked inside. Kiba looked around amazed, noticing tens of hunting trophies hanging on the walls, along with a weapon gallery on the left wall from the entrance. All sort of blades hung there. From katana, through halberds, bows, fuma shuriken and daggers, ending on unique weapons, such as bow, a fighting stick, dao, a type of sword, and even sways, you might say that's a sword too, most decorated with golden paint. I've been expecting you. They all heard a voice, and as they turned in the direction it came from, they saw a man about 40 years old, though his posture aged him much more. Spiky, gray hair and light blue, also blank eyes. His face was full of small scars, some going across his mouth and left eye. He was wearing a classical cage robe, and only the headgear with the kanji symbol for lighting was laying on his desk. I trust Yugito took good care of you, and with that he threw the kunoichi a quick glare. Instantly Kurenai bowed, spotting the man, with her subordinates following, and after she raised her head, she held out the scroll she was carrying. The Kumo leader nodded slightly and took it from her. The Raikage unwrapped the scroll and carefully read it. After a longer while he placed it on his desk, and without looking at the leaf nins, he said, staring at the window, "Tsunade sure surprised me with all of this," he admitted. "I'd never thought that she'll actually decide to make a move like that. A great treat must lay over the leaf if she chooses to do what she did," and with that his eyes stopped at Hinata. "Tell, my child, are you aware of what happened 13 years ago?" The Hyuga heiress only nodded, but Kiba couldn't hold his anger down this time and exploded, placing himself between the cloud leader and his teammate. "Of course she does. She's the one your ninja tried to kidnap." The Raikage's eyes widened slightly, yet he regained his posture almost instantly. "So you're Hyuga Hinata?" He looked at the white-eyed girl with sad eyes. The kunoichi only nodded, turning her gaze towards the floor. The Kumo leader let out a sigh and continued. "I guess it's not worth much, but I am sorry for what have occurred that time. Shinobi world is always full of traitory and low tricks." As he said so, Naruto's head made a quick motion, but no one except Yugito managed to spot that. Yet to do something like that to a 3-year-old is still unacceptable. "I won't ask you for forgiveness, maybe just for your understanding," and with that his looked at Kurenai once more. "I'll prepare the information for Tsunade today, but it's rather late. If you wish to do so, I'll arrange you a place to spend the night." "Thank you, Raikage Dono." The female Junin bowed again and headed towards the door with her subordinates following her. As they exited the palace, Naruto immediately turned towards the cloud kunoichi and with a wide smile, he asked, "So, are there any ramen shops around here?" And the moment he said so, puppy eyes replaced his normal ones. Yugito took a single step back with a drop of sweat falling from her face, while she looked around for help. "Don't worry," Shino calmed her down. "You realize this quickly while around Naruto." "Well, there is one," replied the blonde kunoichi with a little chilly voice, regaining her posture. "It's in the neighborly district," and so she pointed west. "But first you should take care of the place to sleep. You gotta learn, Yugito-chan, that there are some priorities," joked the blonde as he began walking in the direction the cloud nin pointed. The Kumo kunoichi fought her anger for a moment, before releasing it loose and hitting the whisker marks on the back of his head. "Never call me Chan," she yelled, making the Kyubi vessel shiver in horror. Her eyes stopped at the blonde boy after that. She kept staring at him, thought Naruto couldn't tell if it was more curiosity, pity or understanding. He was only sure he knew that look from somewhere. "I guess I can show you," Yugito finally announced, letting out a sigh and heading in the direction she pointed earlier. The whisker marks smiled widely and followed the blonde kunoichi, leaving the rest of the leaf shinobi a little confused. Hinata gave Kurenai a questioning glare, and noticing that, the female Junin only replied with a nod to the unasked question. Immediately the Hyuga heiress ran after the two blondes, who were already halfway through the bridge leading to another district. "Is it wise to separate like that?" asked Kiba with a tiny drop of jealousy in his voice. "Especially Hinata. After all, Kumo was always after the Hyuga bloodline limit. What insurance do we have that they won't attack her now, when we are on their territory?" "They won't," assured Kurenai. "You can trust me on that," and with that she began walking through another bridge, with Shino following her closely. The dog ninja gave one last look in the direction the two kunoichi went with the loudmouth and then joined his sensei and companion in their trip. After a little while, Naruto, Hinata and Yugito finally found the ramen stand. As they sat at the table, the waiter came, asking for their order. The whisker marks checked the menu and after a short hesitation ordered several bowls of different flavors. The Cloud Kunoichi's eyes widened, but as she glared at Hinata, the white-eyed girl and giggled slightly and ordered a single bowl of miso ramen. Yugito just shrugged and made her order as well, giving the menu back to the waiter, who gave the girl a quick glare. They waited for their order in silence. Hinata was a bit uncomfortable with Yugito's presence. The Cloud Kunoichi didn't seem in the mood to talk at all and Naruto was too excited to even notice the fact that no one said a word. Finally the Kumo shinobi was the first one to speak. "How did you obtain it?" she asked, gaining the other blonde's attention. "Don't look at me like that. You know very well what I'm talking about. I guess it takes one to know the other, or maybe it's just that look in our eyes that makes it easy to notice someone of your own kind. But no matter what it is, from the moment I saw you in that town, I somehow knew you were like me." "I'm not sure if I understand what you mean," announced Naruto, looking at the Kunoichi suspiciously. Just then the waiter came back with the girl's order and the first bowl of the loudmouths, but that was the first time Hinata saw her crush not paying attention to the ramen that was placed before him. "I'm talking about your roommate," replied Yugito calmly, also not even bothering to look at her bowl. Instead, she looked deeper into the other blonde's eyes and smiled slightly. "Now that I took a closer look, I guess it were the eyes after all." "What are you getting at?" demanded the whisker marks. "Yes, I can see it in your eyes," continued the Cloud Nin, ignoring the loudmouth's last question. "You know it, you know what it's like, and I wonder what effect it had on you, what really lies beneath that mask of yours," and with that a tiny smirk appeared on her face. "You know it, you know what it's like to get in touch with dark side of human nature. It's the fate of all of us, those who are different." "Those who are different," Naruto repeated and then his eyes widened. "You mean you couldn't tell?" Yugito responded before the Leaf Nin could finish his question. "The world that we live in is always different from that of others, and we are always marked by it, but you should know that just as well as I do." "It's not the same," agreed the Leaf Nin. "But that just means we have to work harder to make it better. After all, neither me nor you can change it into a normal one, no matter how much we try." "So you still haven't reached the darkest corners of it," announced the Kunoichi with a smile. "Maybe it was different from you, but you just don't see it. Cold glares, loneliness and silent hatred form just the tip of all that. It seems I was wrong. What you faced so far is just the shade. Our world lies within the darkest corners of human hearts." The Kyuubi vessel looked at her a little confused, but at this point Hinata decided to cut in. "You mean the lack of acknowledgement, missing the proof that you exist?" Yugito turned towards the white-eyed girl like she just noticed her. Her eyes were a little widened as he looked into the pale pupils of the Leaf Kunoichi. As the Kumo ninja's eyes began to narrow, the Hyuga heiress lowered her sight at the table. The blonde Kunoichi smirked slightly and suspecting she might laugh at Hinata's comment, Naruto instantly turned her attention back to him. "What's so funny?" "Funny," repeated Yugito. "No, I'm more surprised for her to realize this better than you do, that's all," and with that she spoke to the white-eyed girl. "Indeed, for a Hyuga to understand something like this is truly unexpected." "Probably 'cause your eyes lack acknowledgement as well," stated the other blonde, getting angry. "Yes, our world is different from normal people, but do you really think that the likes of us are the only ones who can be alienated? You think that only we have to prove that we are, that we exist. When you fade away in other people's eyes, the best thing you can do is repay them with the same thing," announced the Cloud Nin with her face as grim as ever. "No," Naruto disagreed, raising his voice. "What good will giving up do? You think that you'll find acknowledgement when you're not giving any yourself. The way you're acting you just make everything think that they were right about. So you suggest I'd try doing something good for them?" replied Yugito with a serious face. "Sorry, but I don't intend to be a good girl just so that everyone will turn away from me with my first mistake. Been there, done that, and after everything, you're left alone anyway." "You're wrong, Yugito-san," announced Hinata quietly, making both Jinchuriki look at her again and, for some reason, both seemed to calm down a bit. Naruto-kun was always looked down upon, but he never gave up and he gained people's acknowledgement, and I know that he'll be able to hold on to it, because no matter what, I'll always see him. "Is that so?" asked the blonde Kunoichi with a tiny smirk as she looked at the boy, who blushed slightly. "But you know what, That's exactly the same thing my teammate said just a day before he called me a monster. Both Leaf Nin stared at her for a moment. Silence fell on the table yet again before Yugito decided to speak up again, breaking it. I was once full of hope, just your average, good girl, but the thing that people are not something you can place your faith into, and with that she stood up and began walking away. Neither Naruto nor Hinata said a thing. They just stared at the back of walking Yugito, who soon disappeared behind the corner. Making sure that the two Konoha shinobi couldn't see her, the Kumo Kunoichi propped her back on a wall and looked at the starless night sky. Believing that humans can change, she said to herself with sorrow in her eyes. Now that's the best joke I heard in a long while, and turning her sight away from the sky, she continued walking. Yugito-san is acting a little strange, noticed Hinata quietly, yet Naruto only shook his head in disagreement before replying. No, she just had too many experiences with people who look, but can't see, and with that he let out a sigh. It seems that humans simply prefer to stay blind. As he said so, his head lowered. Noticing that, the white-eyed girl slowly held out her hand and grabbed the boy's arm. The blonde gave her a surprised look at first, but almost immediately it changed into a smile, which made the Hyuga heiress face that was already redden even more. You know, Hinata-chan, began the blonde, also getting red on the face. We really should eat that ramen or it will get cold, the night is chilly today. The girl only nodded after a short pause and they both started eating at their typical speed. Meanwhile, unaware to anyone, two figures wearing black robes with red clouds on them stood at the beginning of the trail Yugito used to lead Kurenai's cell into the hidden cloud village. A man with medium length, white hair gelled back and hazel eyes smirked as he looked at the mountains before him and his companion. He was carrying a large, red scythe with 3 blades on his back and his hite-8 was tied around his neck. And on it was the slashed symbol of Hidden Rain Village. This seems like the place, he stated, giving his comrade a quick glare. What are you so happy about? Asked another man with his hair hidden behind a gray, shinobi mask. His eyes were violet. Well, that's what I assume, and on his forehead was a headband with the slashed, Bakufu symbol. Is it because that stupid man in the mountain thing of yours? You shouldn't laugh at my religion, Kakuzu, responded the one with the scythe. Just like I try not to criticize your love for money, and with that he got back to looking at the trail. So, shall we go forward or will we just wait here? Going in right now is pointless, replied the one called Kakuzu. And it won't even bring us a single golden coin. Sooner or later Kyubi will leave the village and that is when we'll get him, and so will the 6 tails. Yeah, I know Yugito had 2-tailed sealed inside her in the manga, but this is one thing that I can't change, we just have to wait. And so night falls above the hidden cloud village. Without a single star on the sky, darkness wraps itself around the Kumogakur almost as a presage of what awaited the young shinobi the next day. Naruto awoke as sunrays hit his face. He sat up on his bed and yawning, stretched himself. As he scratched his head, still not totally conscious, he looked towards the window and saw Kiba still laying on his bed, with his back turned towards the light, and Akamaru sleeping in his shadow. The dog ninja snored loudly, annoying the blonde, but the whisker marks managed to calm himself down and didn't do anything bad to his companion. Nor something he might have regretted later on. The Kyubi vessel looked to his left where Shino should be sleeping, but the bug user's bed was now empty. He got up before Kiba did. Naruto thought to himself surprised, but then just shrugged that off and went to the bathroom in the attempt to brush his teeth. At that time Shino was walking through the streets of the hidden cloud village, already crowded, even though the hour was still rather early. The sun slowly began to appear over horizon and gray aura started to fade away. The bug user walked right next to the small area where grass grew, surrounded with a low wall. On top of that wall sat Yugito, looking at the rising sun almost as its rays falling on her face brought her calm. The Leaf Nin just threw her a quick glare and noticing that the Kunoichi was ignoring him, he just moved forward. But then Yugito called after him, with her eyes now closed, as she seemed to take incredible pleasure from the morning sun shining on her face. You shouldn't walk through the streets of this village alone, after all, you're not a shinobi from it, and in the next second she jumped down from the wall and landed right before the bug user. Shino, was it? The boy merely nodded, still not saying a thing, which annoyed Yugito a little, yet she didn't show it. "How was your night?" she asked simply, but Shino could feel that she wasn't really interested in the answer. "Why are you even asking?" he replied with a question calmly, as usual keeping his stone face. That sort of acting was probably one of those that annoyed Yugito the most. Through all her life she have seen cold glares, or what's worse, glares that went right through her. In time she learned to accept that and just ignored people looking at her like that back. But in case of people like the Leaf Nin that was now standing before her, she could never tell what was his opinion about her. The lack of that knowledge annoyed her to no end. "Where's the blonde idiot?" she responded, ignoring the bug user's last question. "Don't tell me that dope is still sleeping. I'm supposed to take you to the rakeage first thing in the morning." "It bugs you, doesn't it?" asked Shino with hands in his pockets. Yugito only threw him a confused glare as he continued. "The fact that you thought Naruto was the same as you and yet it turned out he's totally different," and as a note of rage began to appear on the kunoichi's face, the Leaf Nin added quickly, completely unlike himself. "He haven't told me, but I could tell that you were in some way connected with him, and I know you think differently, because Sabaku no Gaara also had a completely different point of view than him, before he met Naruto." "Sabaku no Gaara." The girl's eyebrow went up. "You mean the Sans Cage? I wouldn't think the two knew one another," and with that a tiny smirk appeared on her face. "But that matters not really. I know what it was for them in their villages, but there's some difference between me and that blonde, for you see, he still lacks this final thing that awaits you, when you're a Jinchuriki." "I'm not gonna pretend I know what you speak of," announced the bug user calmly. "I do not carry a demon inside me, so I can only imagine what you went through, but as you'll spend some time with Naruto, you'll see that he has a strange gift, and even you might get your hope in people back," and with saying so, he continued walking, soon disappearing from the kunoichi's view. "Only imagine," Yugito repeated in her mind with a short laugh. "There's no way you can imagine something like that, 'cause even your worst nightmares can't compare," and with that thought he looked at the sun, which raised a little. "It's something that one is born with and others have no chance at experiencing that, aren't those your words, Hana?" That time, elsewhere, Naruto walked out of his room into the hallway as he stretched himself yet again, closing his eyes. At this time the door to the room across the hall opened with a slight noise, and as the blonde opened his eyes, he saw Hinata coming out from the bathroom in her kimono. The white-eyed girl froze instantly, unsure as to how react, giving the Kyuubi vessel to look her over. She was wearing a yellow kimono, decorated with black palms at the bottom. A big, red ribbon was tied on her back and her hair was clipped in the traditional way. Finally realizing that he's been staring at her for some time now, his face basically as red as the kunoichi's or maybe even more, he turned around with an embarrassed, "Sorry," escaping his mouth. The Hyuga heiress didn't reply, mostly due to the fact that she was both too excited and embarrassed as well. She just slowly walked over to the door leading to the room she shared with Kurenai and disappeared behind the frame soon after. As he heard the door being shut, Naruto let out the air for the first time since he spotted Hinata entering the hallway. His blush didn't vanish at all as the sight he just saw kept appearing before his eyes, seeming more magnificent each time. The blonde regained his posture only because of Kiba, who stuck his head out the door to their room and noticing his friend standing stiff, he asked, "What the hell are you doing?" But noticing the color of his face, he had to hold himself back from laughter. He saw Hinata blush countless times, but for some reason seeing that Naruto mimicking her turned out to be one of the most hilarious sights he has even seen. Some time later Shino arrived back and announced that Yugito is already waiting. Kurenai just took one sandwich her and getting up from her seat, she stated, "There's no need for you guys to go with me really, the whole thing will probably take an hour or two, so if you want, you can go have some fun in the city, but don't overdo it," and with that she went outside, where the Cloud Kunoichi was supposed to wait for her. "So we got a whole hour to ourselves," announced Kiba with a big smile. "What do you guys wanna do?" And getting ahead of Naruto, he added quickly, "No, we won't go to eat ramen." At hearing that the blonde immediately lowered his hand and became a bit grim, making Hinata giggle slightly at the scene. Seeing no other proposals, the dog ninja just stood up and slowly walked over towards the door with his dog following him. "Fine, you guys just do what you want, Akamaru and I will go for a walk. See you guys in an hour." And with that he was gone, jumping from one roof onto another. Naruto and Hinata looked questioningly on Shino, who simply stood up as well and headed towards their rooms without really saying anything. "Looks like it'll be just the two of us," the blonde finally stated as he looked towards the Hyuga heiress, but the moment he did so the scene from this morning appeared in his head again and instantly his face became red once more. As he looked away, hoping that will stop his sudden, fast heart beating, he continued with a little shaking voice. "So, what would you say for some ramen, Hinata-chan?" He finally managed to spit out as for some reason he couldn't understand, he felt that he started sweating slightly. "Sounds good," replied the girl with a warm smile as she slowly stood up with the blonde following her tracks. At that time Yugito was walking down the streets, towards the gate. She was told that Kurenai will be escorted there, along with her subordinates, so the only thing Kunoichi was supposed to do was to bring them down the mountains. As she sat on a nearby rock and stared into space, Kiba and Akamaru went by. The blonde girl just looked to the sky to see the spinning figure of the dog ninja coming above her with a rover following its master. "You loved animals too," the Kunoichi said to herself out loud. "But you did prefer cats. That black fur ball of yours sure annoyed me," and so she laughed to herself. "I wish I could go back to those days, to the way things were, even though they were just an illusion." Meanwhile Naruto and Hinata were leaving the ramen stand, after the blonde finished his 12th bowl of his favorite meal. The whisker marks looked at the sun and after a short calculation, he turned towards his companion. "We still have some time, Hinata-chan, where do you want to go now? How about we just walk around the town?" Purposed the white-eyed girl, and after receiving a small nod from the Kyuubi vessel, she grabbed him by the hand and dragged him behind her towards the wide alley with all sorts of shops located on both sides. As the two went down the street, they made several stops before different stores. Naruto got really interested in weaponry the moment he noticed magnificent blades displaced behind the window. First thing that caught him attention was a spectacular spear with a big blade on the end, which stick was surrounded with gold, thus making its design very unique. Tens of swords awaited those who entered the shop, each made differently. Some had golden handles and strange runes on the blades, others were decorated with colorful jewels, there were even some made from the special mix on metals, in many cases about which Naruto didn't even heard about. Hinata on the other hand wanted to visit almost every boutique in the alley. In most cases she only looked the dresses up and down before leaving the shop, but several times she tried something on, just to have some fun. The blonde patiently sat down, waiting for the Hyuga heiress to finish changing into another kimono that she saw, and instantly the event from this morning appeared before his eyes, making his face turn red yet again. As time went on and the white-eyed girl was still in the changing room, Naruto managed to regain his posture once more, however he wasn't destined to keep it for too long. The moment his blush faded away and his heart stopped pounding, Hinata exited the changing room. This time things certainly got worse for the blonde the moment he saw the Hyuga heiress in another kimono, this time a light blue one, decorated with silver snowflakes all over. A big, yellow ribbon could be seen tied behind her back. And that sight turned out to be enough to make Naruto go wild. In an instant his face turned completely red and he felt a nosebleed incoming. His collar started to be too tight and his heart began pounding as it wanted to escape his chest. "So what do you think, Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked the boy, who just sat there with his mouth wide open. She blushed slightly as she spun on her feet to show the entire outfit to her crush. "Marvelous," he replied quietly as he felt that he's starting to sweat. For a short while he said nothing more and then suddenly he realized something and began to talk a little too quickly. "Oh, you mean the kimono? It's great. You really look nice in it, Hinata-chan." The girl's blush deepened as she smiled to the Kyuubi vessel and then headed towards the changing room, disappearing in it a moment later. The whisker marks still sat that almost as if he got glued to the chair. Finally, after some struggle, he managed to get up and swallowing his saliva loudly, he borrowed a bottle of water from a nearest passerby and drank it up. While he apologized to the confused Cloud Nin, Hinata exited the changing room in her usual clothes and smiling slightly under her nose she bought the dress she just tried on before the blonde even managed to turn around and notice her doing so. As they both exited the store, with the Hyuga heiress carrying a bag with her, Naruto spotted a small stand with ice cream and immediately dragged the kunoichi there and ordered some. Soon the two were walking down the alley, licking few, rainbow-colored balls. They kept on walking, stopping by in a store from time to time. But as they went, Naruto noticed something. Many of the people they were passing by threw them a cold glare. He was used to it and most likely he'd just ignore it if it wasn't for the fact that for the first time those glares wasn't for him. They were aimed at Hinata. The white-eyed girl lowered her sight slightly as she noticing the blonde's realization. Her smile slowly faded away. For some reason she didn't bear to look at her crush. However, the Kyuubi vessel seemed to sense that, because he suddenly said, "That's why Yugito wasn't right." Hinata raised her sight at the boy, a little surprised, but she still didn't say a thing. It's not just the Jinchuriki. Everyone that's a little different, everyone that's special, we are all outcasts in the society. And it's just because people can't accept that someone is different, it doesn't matter who we are not like the rest and as such, we should be allowed to walk beside them. This is how you felt all this time, didn't you, Naruto-kun? She finally managed to speak up, yet she still haven't raised her head to look at him. This is the fate you, Gaara-san, even Yugito-san had to face. The blonde didn't respond immediately as if he was thinking about the right reply. On the one hand he could tell her that she was right. But on the other, he didn't want to admit it. He knew that she understood his pain, at least to an extent, and admitting that she's right would be painful for her as well. When one receives such treatment, he also learns how to deal with it, he finally replied, after a longer silence. I fooled around to make people notice me. Gaara became a loner before he entered the Chunin selection exam. And Yugito just repaid people with the same glares they threw at her. But if you ask me if any of this is a good way to fight a thing like that, I can't really answer that, and I don't think Gaara or Yugito could either. Those things are personal and as such there's no general rules to those, but there's one thing that you have to do in order to be able to keep living, and that is accepting the fact that they look at you like that, and do what you can, to not see those glares ever again. You had to take it for so long, Naruto-kun, noticed the Hyuga heiress with sadness in her voice. I don't think I can even imagine how you felt all this time. No, I suppose you can't, nodded the blonde, suddenly crossing her way and looking deep into her eyes as she raised her head. And I'm not gonna lie that it was easy, but now it is, 'cause I have someone to talk to about it, and with that he gave her a warm smile. The white-eyed girl blushed deeply, but she didn't turn away this time. She only smiled back and with a slight nod, she replied, "Of course you can, Naruto-kun," and after a short moment of hesitation, she added, "That's what friends are for." Yo guys, they suddenly heard as Kiba landed in front of them along with Akamaru. Sorry to interrupt here. With this he hesitated a bit and threw a quick glare at each of the two. Date, and as he said the D word both, other leaf nins started to have a blushing contest, but the dog ninja only smirked and then continued, "But Kurenai-sensei wants us to meet her at the gate. We're leaving," and with that he guided the two red-faced teens to their meeting place. That time, outside Kumo, Hidan and Kakuzu were resting in the treetops near the trail leading up the mountains, awaiting their target to show up. None of them even noticed someone coming, until they both heard a voice all too familiar. After what happened in the sand, I guess you Akatsuki became desperate to get the Jinchuriki, since you two got sent here. As they turned calmly in the direction the voice came from and stopped a certain blonde with long hair, made into dreadlocks. Kakuzu, who almost immediately looked away again, was the first to speak. You came here to save the Kyuubi. Nothing of the sort, came a response as a big smile appeared on Kengo's face. Neither Kyuubi nor Six Tails interest me in any way, I just decided to drop by, see how things were going. By the way, with Sasori gone, what did you guys do? You didn't left another empty spot like the time Orochimaru quit, did you? Toby took his place, came a short response from Hidan, who was still observing the blonde with a suspicious glare. The dreadlocks burst out laughing at hearing that, but he soon calmed himself down a bit and replied, I feel sorry for Deidara then. Boy, I'd sure hate to be stuck with him as my partner. Maybe you fellows would like to turn her fate around. What do you mean? Demanded Kakuzu simply, still not turning back towards Kengo. The former leaf nin only smirked slightly before replying. I'm done with him. I know that you probably don't care much, but just in case, we'll be waiting for saving. At the old meeting spot, the one in Rain Country, I guessed it'd be best to inform you two about that, after all, but before he could finish, he was cut off by Kakuzu. You think this is a good joke, don't you? He asked coldly, this time turning to face the blonde. You expect me to believe that you came all this way just to tell us that you spared Sasori and inform us where he is? Believe what you want, responded Kengo a little annoyed. But don't tell me you expected from me to fight you guys. You know very well that among everyone, you're the one I'd like to fight the least, Hidan. The side user only narrowed his eyes at that, but said nothing. The blonde's eye twitched split second, but none of the two Akatsuki seemed to notice. Do with what I told you what you desire, the former Leaf Nin concluded, and with that he was gone. You think he spoke the truth? Asked Hidan with an emotionless voice, but his partner only narrowed his eyes. Maybe, but right now we have other things to worry about. The Jinchuriki, they're coming. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.